Okay. Hold on while I get something. Where's my phone? View channel. Hope some of y'all are popping in right now. Hopefully this is it. Why isn't the thumbnail popping up? Alrighty then. I think that should be it. Hopefully something's going on. 2 views. Okay. Why, hello, sunshines. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, work called me in today, and I just had to take the shift and add some wings, and I'm back here streaming for you all. This is our 3rd stream on our schedule. I'm streaming tomorrow in the morning for the first time, which will be nice to see. It's gonna be one of my childhood games as well. So I really hope to do that with y'all. So today's game is gonna be interesting. It's from ebi-hime on each.io. This should be hello Ignis. Hello Ignis. We're just starting out right now with a new stream. So this is gonna be our game for today. It's going to be called Unnatural Urges. This is a visual novel by ebi-hime. They produced some visual novels, one of which I played on PS5 at some point. This is I'm going to read the story for you all. Which actually I'm going to print the screen. Hold on. I'm going to get paint and get this. It should be easy to read. I hope you all are having a good day so far. I know I am. I hope that your day has been full of sunshines. Me personally, it's been raining here. It was raining. And you know, it was hard to see driving back here. It was so foggy, the windows. The windows are just... That being said... Alright, so this is the plot of Unnatural Urges, which I'm gonna pull up right here. So this is the plot. This is what we're gonna get into. That girl isn't a human, no matter how much she might look like one. She's evil. If you let her stay here, she'll destroy you. Haruna Masaomi is a man in his early 60s who lives in the small countryside village of Higashikawa. His wife, Moriko, died several years prior, and the couple never really had any children, leaving Masaomi on his own. Masaomi regrets not having any children, but he has made peace with his secluded life, and he's happy enough willing away his remaining years reading murder mysteries. At least until he meets a young girl collapsed in his garden late at night during a thunderstorm. Masaomi doesn't know where the girl came from or what happened to her, but one thing is clear, she's no ordinary human. With horns like hers and long sharp claws, she can only be a monster. Ignoring the warnings of his housekeeper, Masaomi decides to take a girl in. But what will happen next? What will indeed happen next? This sounds very interesting. This sounds like some Fruits Basket kind of stuff. Because, you know, when if you've seen Fruits Basket, you might know about the protagonist Toru Honda. And she was taken in by this family who happened to have the spirits of, like, you know, animals from an ancient story. And they turned out to be actually really nice people, right? And she was getting caught up in their family drama and all. And they ended up, you know, she ended up marrying, you know, one of them, Kyo, right? And I think we're going to get into some pretty interesting stuff. Okay, if you're hearing anything, that's my parents. Hold on. I'm trying to stream. You're so loud, everybody's complaining. Sorry guys, I was just not about to stream with everybody be talking in the background. You know how we are, Latino families be loud as hell. And it's just, it is hard to stream when there's like 10 people living with you. It's like a madhouse. And I just had to mute the microphone so you wouldn't hear any of the commotion. I didn't want to be embarrassed on stream, I hope you understand. But I did get everyone to realize that I'm streaming now and ready to get the game on. And yeah, hope you like it. Let's stop stalling. Run anyway. What's with the smart screen stuff? How do I window capture? Right, this is Unnatural Urges. We're gonna stream it right now and let's see how this goes. Haruna Masomi was dying. He lay on his back on his futon, staring with vacant eyes at the ceiling. His vision was starting to blur. It had been failing him for the last couple of years, but now everything looked vague and half-formed. His own bedroom was almost unfamiliar to him, so indistinct he might as well have been viewing it through a thick film of fog. Masaomi wasn't doing anything strenuous, he was only lying down, but it was worryingly hard for him to breathe. It felt like a weight was pressing on his chest, one which forcibly drove the air from his lungs. Weakly, the old man gasped and hacked, his emaciated body shuddering. Masaomi was no stranger to lying on his futon, incapacitated. He had been born with a weak constitution, and he had spent much of his childhood convalescing. There's a lot of big words here. I'm trying to, I don't know. Can they use simpler wording here? It had always been especially bad in the winter, so much so his parents had often worried that he might not survive till the spring thaw came. Masaomi had managed to cling to life, however, despite his parents' shared anxieties and various physicians' worst-case diagnoses. Masaomi had survived more close brushes with death than most young children, but it hadn't been without consequences. With every illness he fought off, his body weakened. One bout of illness made Masaomi more susceptible to catching another aliment, then another. Masaomi's lungs began to give way from the force of his coughing, and his joints never quite recovered from spending so much time lying down. There had always been something wrong with his left leg in particular. It had ached ever since he was a little boy. And before he was 20, he had been bidden to use a cane to get around. So yeah, we're dealing with a sick person here, and just, yeah, it's self-explanatory. Even now, his leg still gave him a lot of grief. It was nothing short of a miracle that Masaomi had survived for so long. His parents hadn't believed that their youngest son would live into the double digits, but he had proven them wrong. Masaomi had lived to the ripe old age of 62, an age which during his childhood had seemed fantastically far away. Masaomi supposed he was fortunate that he had lived long enough to see wrinkles forming beneath his eyes, to see his hair turning gray, but didn't feel very fortunate as he lay on his futon that windy, raining night, his body racked with pain. Every cough made him feel like he was being filleted. Masaomi's lungs were painfully tight and his throat was burning. He ached awfully, and it didn't help that he could smell his own skin, his own sweat. It smelt of death. Masaomi's bedroom, where he had passed many a peaceful night, had turned into a mortuary. Masaomi groaned. Once again he coughed. His vision wavered, and as it did, his mind's eye retrieved the scene which had taken place a scant 3 years prior. Masaomi could still recall how his maid, Kaoruko, had stared at him, her face stricken as she cried. That girl isn't a human, no matter how much she might look like one. She's evil. If you let her stay here, she'll destroy you. Masaomi had never seen a grown woman look so petrified before, especially a grown woman as sensible as Kaoruko. Not even Masaomi's own mother had looked so frightened when her son had fallen ill with pneumonia for the 5th winter in a row. Kaoruko had believed in her warning so wholeheartedly, perhaps it was a good thing she was no longer there. Masaomi hadn't seen Kaoruko in 3 years. Masaomi had barely seen any of the other villagers in 3 years either. They all had kept away from him, convinced that he was cursed, and maybe he was. If Kaoruko had been there, Masaomi doubted she would have shown him any sympathy. Instead, she would have said, in that arch way of hers, "I told you so." Wow. This is sad. Indeed, Masaomi thought vaguely Kaoruko had warned him that Rika was bad news, and yet Masaomi exhaled. His eyelids began to droop. Then he breathed his last, lying on his wrinkled futon in his bedroom, while the red-eyed Rinka sat beside him. Rinka stared, her eyes bored into Masaomi's, her crimson irises a bright, brilliant red like spider lilies. She dipped her head. Oh! Oh my god! What is this? As she opened her mouth and began to feed. Yeah, I kinda had a feeling this was a prologue. We're going back 3 years now. I'm wondering who Rika is. Goodness me, it really is coming down outside, isn't it? Oh wait, that's Kaoruko. I put on a deep voice. Good lord, I'm so cringe. Ah! I'm sorry, Sunshines. I thought Kaoruko was the old man. That was Masaomi. Good lord. Let me read that back in a feminine voice. Goodness me, it really is coming down outside, isn't it? Ishikawa Kaoruko cast her eyes up to the ceiling, her lips pressed together. It was early in the spring, and the weather was still cool. The month of February had only just passed, and though green shoots were slowly beginning to poke up through the earth in the forest, and at the base of the nearby mountain, the days were still short, the nights long. This night in particular had felt very long indeed. The sun had begun to set a little after 6:30, bringing with it a fearsome storm which shook the tiled roof of Masaomi's home. Masaomi's maid, the cool and capable Kaoruko, had visited Masaomi earlier in the day to clean his house and to cook him a hearty meal, as she often did. She hadn't banked, however, upon it starting to rain before the sun could set, knowing that the rain would soon turn into a full-blown thunderstorm. Masaomi was getting on in years, but he wasn't deaf, and he could hear the thunder rumbling lowly in the distance. The air practically seemed to crackle with electricity. It was a tense night, one which particularly oozed with promise. Maybe Masaomi was being a little too fanciful. He had spent much of that day immersing himself within the pages of an Edogawa Rampo mystery, but it felt like something significant was going to happen. What that something was, however, he could not say. He could only sit there and wait, sipping at the cup of green tea Kaoruko had poured for him while she tutted. It all started so quickly too. There wasn't any warning. The sky was so clear earlier today. I even thought to hang my laundry, though I didn't have the time. I had to come out here. I apologize for the inconvenience I have caused you. Perhaps there is a silver lining to this. At least your laundry isn't at any risk of getting wet. That's what I was telling myself. It was a little hard to manage 2 households though, especially given, well... Karuko patted her stomach. No. Masumi knew full well. Karuko was in her 4th month of pregnancy. Oh, she's pregnant! Karuko was in her 4th month of pregnancy, and she had finally begun to show. Karuko's ankles had begun to swell, or so she said, almost as much as her stomach, and she was starting to get strange cravings. Simmered kombu and tangerines, though not together, being chief among them. Masumi had told Karuko she could put her duties as his housemaid on hold so she could rest and recuperate. But Karuko hadn't been having any of it. If I'm going to have a baby come the autumn, I'll need all the money I can get. Toshiyuki has been saving, but I'm afraid it isn't enough. I want to give my child the best start in life I can, which means I need to push myself that bit harder. Besides, I'm not that far along. I can still beat your futon to make you cups of tea, Masumi. It really isn't any trouble. That was what Karuko had said, at least, when Masumi had broached the topic with her a couple of weeks prior. Masumi was grateful that Karuko had continued to care for him, but you could see that his cool, capable housekeeper was beginning to grow anxious. It was late at night and the storm was still raging. It seemed unlikely that it would stop anytime soon. It might even go on all night. Masumi had lived on the outskirts of a small village in the Gifu Mountains called Higashikawa. Masumi's home was a large one which he had inherited from his parents after their passing. This was his childhood home, where he had called there's that big word again! Where he had lived as a boy, struck down by disease after disease. The house was an old one. It dated back to the early Meiji era, and when Masumi had been a young boy, it hadn't possessed running water or electricity. Times had changed, however, and now Masumi's old-fashioned home had been dragged into the 20th century. His kitchen was outfitted with a fridge and a freezer, and he had even possessed a television. Not that Masumi watched it very much. The picture quality was poor, and in any case, he always preferred books. He had lost himself within their pages as a youth, and he continued to turn into books, even now. Masumi didn't have the happiest memories associated with his old creaking house, but it was also the place where he had played with his brothers, where his mother had read him stories, where his father had taught him the names of all the trees in their spacious garden. His sprawling home might have been in an inconvenient location. It was a good 20-minute walk away from the village, but he loved it, and he had no desire to leave. Masumi could be awfully stubborn like that. He could tell that Karuko was getting uncomfortable, however, about how late it had become. Karuko's husband, Toshiyuki, would have returned home at least half an hour ago. He would be wondering where his wife had gotten off to, and why he had to return home to find dinner waiting for him on the table. Karuko was a rather short, slender woman, despite her no-nonsense attitude, and she might have feared it was unsafe for her to attempt to walk back to the village, where it was so late, and the storm was still raging. It was pitch black outside, and peals of thunder split the air as if some celestial being was routinely dropping plates from a great distance. Karuko wasn't afraid of the thunder. She was too sensible for that, but a muscle in her jaw did twitch every time it rumbled. Goodness, this is inconvenient. If only I had known the weather would take such a rotten turn, I would have brought an umbrella. Do you really think an umbrella would protect you from this storm? It sounds much too violent. Well, Karuko considered, then sighed. No, maybe not. I would have had to wait it out regardless, but Toshiyuki would be worried about me. You shouldn't. You should know that you're with me. You visit every single Friday. You have for almost 4 years. Karuko had visited Masumi every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday without fail, never missing a visit. She was responsible, and she was robust alongside it. Sometimes Masumi wondered whether her immune system had been forged from steel. Karuko never seemed to get sick no matter how cold it was, no matter how tired she was, no matter how often she prepared soothing rice porridge for Masumi when he came down with influenza or pneumonia. Karuko had sat by Masaumi's side on numerous occasions, where he had been consigned to his futon and she had wiped his forehead free from sweat, had helped him sip up to sip at restorative rice dishes and cups of green tea. Her fortitude was rather impressive. Masaomi thought that Toshiyuki should regard his capable young wife with the same respect that he did, but that didn't seem to be the case. Karuko rarely spoke about her marriage to Masaomi, but Masaomi had always had the impression that Toshiyuki didn't appreciate her enough. Yes, well, that's part of the problem. Karuko sighed, her hand resting upon her stomach. Toshiyuki thinks I shouldn't spend so much time working. I think it bothers him that I spend so many hours in another man's home, cleaning and cooking for him. And why should that be? He doesn't think that I have any indelicate designs upon you, does he? He thinks that everybody has indelicate designs on me, even Mr. Miyake, and he's as happily married as one can be. He's warned me not to go into the butcher's before because Mr. Miyake was kind enough to give me some pig intestines on the house. I told him he was just being nice. He said it was to celebrate the baby, and anyway, it was going to go bad, but Toshiyuki wasn't happy about it. He made me throw the intestines out, which seems like such a waste. That is rather wasteful, yes. Masaomi frowned, now feeling rather sorry for Karuko. Not, of course, that he showed it. Karuko did not like it when anybody pitied her. She was too prideful. You should have brought those intestines over to me. I would have made short work of them. You shouldn't be having intestines at your age, Masaomi. They're bad for your teeth. If you chew too much, you'll hurt your jaw. I know, but I have not had intestine in a while. Besides, I'm not that old. You're almost 60. Which means I'm not 60 just yet. You will be in August. You only have a few months left. You remember my birthday, Karuko. That's so kind of you. Well, of course I do. I've been working for you for 4 years. It's only natural that I remember these things, though Toshiyuki doesn't like that very much either. Is there anything that husband of yours does like? Pachinko and mahjong mostly. Oh yes, I know. You told me. Masaomi's expression darkened. If Toshiyuki dislikes his wife working for other men so much, maybe he shouldn't be so hasty to gamble all of his own money anyway. Then you could afford to take some time off. It's a nice idea, but it's not possible right now. There are always bills to pay. And money to fritter away at the pachinko parlor. He hasn't been doing it that much lately. He stopped going to Kawano on the weekends as often as he used to. Kawano was the closest town to Higashikawa. It was more modern and contained boutique shops, chain restaurants, and pachinko parlors. It was, in short, the perfect place to go if one wanted to waste a lot of money. Masaomi thought Kawano was a bit too bustling, but Toshiyuki seemed to enjoy it. He enjoyed most things which involved frittering away large sums of money while Karuko worked to make ends meet. Masaomi was concerned about his housekeeper, but he knew voicing his continued concern was pointless. He could offer advice, but Karuko wasn't obliged to take it. Masaomi wasn't her father, though. He was certainly old enough for it. All he could do was caution Karuko without trying to be too overbearing. Older generations were typically shunned in society as it was, for being relics of a bygone era, an era where Japan had been at war and resources had been scarce. Masaomi hardly needed to prejudice his maid against him even further by giving advice she didn't want. It was in Masaomi's nature to lecture people. He had once been a teacher, but he tried to curb this impulse. He had not taught for years, not since his health had deteriorated 4 winters prior. That was when Karuko had begun to work for him. Masaomi, fearing for his own frailty, had thought it prudent to have a housekeeper to attend to the chores he could not. Conscious that Karuko's mood was worsening and wanted to change the subject, Masaomi began to tell Karuko about the book he had been reading. It really is rather good, you know. Perhaps you should give Grandpa a try. I know you'll like your mysteries. I used to, when I was younger. You're still young. But I don't have all the time in the world, not like you do. I've been so busy since I married. Does Toshiyuki not like it when you read books either? It's not that he doesn't like it per se, he just thinks there are more important things I could be doing. Like Masaomi thought gloomily, waiting on him hand and foot. It was quite funny really that Toshiyuki was so opposed to Karuko working for as a maid for other men, when he expected her to be servile in all aspects. But maybe that was the real mood of Toshiyuki's disdain. He wanted Haruko to dedicate herself fully to him. Anything else must have seemed like an act of betrayal, even if she was working to earn money for her and their baby. Masaomi spoke a little more on his novel while Haruko listened. Masaomi was unsure whether Haruko was listening out of genuine interest or mere politeness, but her shoulders began to relax. She looked marginally happier than she had when talking about Toshiyuki at least. The conversation eventually shifted to the inclement weather, and Masaomi is concerned about how his garden would fare as the rain drummed against the roof, and it sent him pitter-patter. It might have been cold outdoors as the storm raged on, but it was comfortable enough inside with the brazier burning. The smell of green tea filled the air, buoyed by the whispery tendrils of steam which unfurled from their teacups. Masaomi finished his cup and had half a mind to ask Haruko to prepare a fresh pot. She could hardly go anywhere at the moment, the weather being what it was, when he heard it. Oh God! It's like somebody getting murdered outside? There was a cry from outdoors, one which was muffled by the walls of Masaomi's home, but which made both him and Haruko jump regardless. Sorry about the phone, guys. I'm subscribed to a lot of VTubers. Yeah, there's a lot of notifications. I'm subscribed to a lot of VTubers, guys. By the way, how's this story for you all? Well, hello, Particle Prime. Hello, Kmar. Hello, Marcus. Sorry, I haven't been reading the chat, but yeah, we're reading Unnatural Urges. I hope you all are liking the story so far. It's interesting, honestly. Yeah. All right, let's get back to it. They're screaming like they're getting stabbed. There was something visceral about the cry, something animal, but Masaomi thought it sounded unsettlingly human. It was high-pitched, high enough to split the silence, and it sent chills down Masaomi's spine. I say, what in the world was that? Could it have been the thunder? It could, I suppose, but I doubt it. That sounded like a woman to me, or perhaps a young girl. What girl would be outdoors in weather like this, though? Maybe the young Wakabayashi girl? Wakabayashi? Oh no, Wakabayashi! That's a long name. Wakabayashi. Isn't she always getting into scrapes? She is, but I doubt even she would sneak out of her home at such an hour. The rain's been coming down for hours, and it's windy too. She gets soaked through. You're not wrong about that, I suppose. But I think I should go and check just in case. No, you shouldn't. Haruko spoke firmly, too firmly perhaps, for her maid to be her master. But she had known Masaomi for a long time. At this point, they were more like friends than they were an employer and his employee. There's no reason for you to trouble yourself. Nobody should be outdoors in this weather, especially not you. You'll catch your cold. You'll catch your death of cold. It wasn't that long ago that you had that awful flu. Do you remember? I had to spend weeks nursing you back to health. I wasn't sure if you would pull through. Even after I had asked the physician to come and tend to you. Your lungs are too weak to place any unnecessary strain on them. I don't want you getting sick again. Well, you have a point. Masaomi relented, now beginning to see the error of his ways when... Oh my god, somebody go save her! He heard it again, more loudly this time than the last. The sound which split the air, shattering the pleasant pitter-patter of the raindrops, was unmistakably a scream. Somebody was in Masaomi's garden, and it sounded like they were being attacked, though by what, Masaomi had no idea. He could not continue to sit idle, however, not once somebody was in trouble. Masaomi reached for his cane, which was resting by his cushion, then hauled himself upright with no small amount of difficulty. Haruko, meanwhile, looked whiter than porridge. Her hands were clasped at her front and she was shaking. Do you still think that was the thunder, Haruko? Masaomi glanced at Haruko, who frowned. Obviously not. It's clear something's amiss, but I wish you would sit down. I don't think it's safe out there. And what, pray tell, makes you say that? No person could have made an awful noise like that. What if it's a demon? Now that is rather fanciful. Have you seen many demons in your time, Haruko? Not with my own eyes, but I've heard stories. We do live near the mountains. People say wicked monsters live up there. Sometimes on stormy nights like this, they come into the village to wreak havoc. Maybe people believe that in the Edo era. But it's 1972, my dear Karuko. Oh, it's 50 years ago. We live in the 70s. Oh wow, this is when Astro Boy was like the big anime in speed racing. Haven't we, as a society, advanced past worrying about demons? For my part, I think it is silly to jump at wind shadows. These things always have logical explanations, as Inugawa Rampo says in his stories. And I would feel awful if there were a person in my garden who requires medical aid and I ignored them. I think that prospect is far more frightening than your tales of wicked demons. Masaomi chuckled to himself as he padded through his house, Karuko trailing behind him. She didn't look very happy about this decision, but still, she followed. She had no choice. She must have known, after 4 years of working with Masaomi, that he was a stubborn old man who wouldn't budge. Oh, fine, on your own head, be it. If there is some hellish monster out there, however, I will be responsible for what happens next. I did try to warn you. Indeed you did. The concern you have shown for me is most remarkable. You truly are an exemplary maid. And yet you still refuse to listen to me. Karuko sighed. What's the point of me worrying when you won't pay any heed? It's enough to make me wonder why I bother. I suppose we're both as stubborn as one another. Yes, I suppose we must be. How foolish. Karuko accompanied Masaomi out of the living room and into the hallway. From the hallway with its warped wooden boards, Masaomi opened the sliding door which opened out onto the veranda. The veranda led directly out into the garden, but was sheltered from the worst of the falling rain by an overhanging roof. The roof protected Masaomi from the driving droplets which were cast down from the heavens, though there was nothing to shield him from the cold. The wind was uncomfortably cold, and it blew at his hair and his sleeves. The garden was so dark it was hard for Masaomi to see more than a few feet in front of his own face. The tall Zelkova trees had been turned into shadowy silhouettes which shook fitfully in the breeze. The hedgerows little more than dark, indistinct blobs. Though there was a full moon, round like an egg, it was shrouded by clouds. The clouds were thick and dark, and they unleashed raindrops from up on high in an unrelenting salvo. The rain rattled against the roof like artillery fire. The wind was starting to pick up. It was strong enough to fell trees, to tear down fences, to pick tiles clean from roofs, and fling them across great distances like discuses. Masaomi shivered. Perhaps Karuko had been right. It would have been for the best if he had remained indoors. He was getting on in years, and he felt the cold keenly, despite the many layers he wore, and in many cases, he had yet to locate the source of those terrible screams. Whether they had been caused by a demon, an injured person, or a wild animal, Masaomi had no idea. Masaomi was prepared to return to the comfortable warmth of his home, much to the charging Karuko's relief, when, oh, Masaomi saw it. One of the dark, dense rain clouds which had been blocking the moon shifted, blown to one side by the breeze. The moon's light now streamed down, unimpeded, upon his garden, illuminating the shaken boughs of the Zelkova trees, the rippling water in the ornamental pond. The heads of the spider lilies which were taking a fierce beating, and the small crumpled body of a young child. The child was lying on the ground, unmoving, face first in the dirt. Their little fingers were curled against the dirt like fossils, and their long hair fluttered around them in the breeze. The child was little more than a crumpled shape. Masaomi couldn't determine their gender from a distance, but they were so small and so slight Masaomi wouldn't have put them at much older than 5 or 6. What was a child like that doing outside on such a foul night? Where were their parents? Anxious thoughts raced through Masaomi's head until a peal of thunder split the sky, spurring him into action. It didn't matter where the child had come from, nor who their parents were. Neither did it matter that they were a complete stranger, that Masaomi had never seen them before. They were all alone, and Masaomi meant to protect them. Oh, you poor thing, Masayomi dashed forwards as quickly as his left leg would allow him, heedless of the rain which pelted him. He paused by the child's body and bent, using a considerable amount of energy. Masayomi was old enough that his joints often ached. His knees in particular liked to seize up when the weather was cold like this, which made it hard for him to kneel, harder even to stand. Masayomi refused to let his own ailments get the better of him. However, he could not allow that to happen, not when a small child's health was at risk. He scooped the child against his chest using his free arm and stood, wincing all the while at the sheer effort this took. He was already panting when he had straightened himself up, and he had yet to return to the house. His heart was warmed, however, by the knowledge that he had managed to retrieve the child, that they were now nuzzled against the front of his kimono. Masayomi looked down at them, at their fair, heart-shaped face, and frowned. "Are you all right? Can you hear me?" Masayomi addressed the child gently, though they didn't stir. They seemed to be unconscious. Masayomi could feel them breathing, however, against his chest. He could hear the telltale stammer of their heart as he held them close. At least that was a positive. Some of Masayomi's worry left him as he examined the child, only now taking in their features. Masayomi had been uncertain of the child's gender when first he had seen them, but now he thought she was probably a girl. Her long hair suggested as much. She wasn't dressed as a young lady should, however. She wore a thin cotton yukata, which wasn't really appropriate for the weather, and it was spattered with mud. The back of the yukata had been shredded, perhaps by the claws of some animal, and Masayomi thought he could see blood smeared across the dun brown fabric. Had she been attacked by an animal? Masayomi was unsure. The girl's hair, meanwhile, was similarly muddy. Though Masayomi could see it was uncommonly fair. Her hair was a striking gold color, like wheat, and it streamed down to her waist. Was she not Japanese? Her unusual features suggested as much. She could have been European with hair like that, but another detail about the girl's unusual appearance made Masayomi frown. Her hair, though captivating, wasn't the most unusual aspect of her appearance. She had horns. 2 curved appendages emerged from her scalp. They were white as milk, white as moonlight, but they turned red at the tips, the color eerily reminiscent of blood. There was also something peculiar about the girl's hands. They were dyed a similar shade of red, as if they had been rooting about in trails only a few moments ago. Well, she's cute, by the way. She's cute. She kind of looks like me. Her nails, meanwhile, was very long and very sharp, unnaturally so. Had Karuko been right about this girl? Was she really a demon? Karuko certainly seemed to think so, because she was gripping one of the wooden joists of the veranda as if for dear life, her eyes wide and her face white with horror. My God! Karuko gasps as Masayomi carried the motionless girl inside. Just look at her! What's wrong with her? That girl! No, that monster! She isn't normal! Masayomi didn't care for Karuko's cries, but they had at least one positive. The girl's long, fair eyelashes fluttered. Then she raised her head. Her eyes met Masayomi's, and when they did, his breath caught momentarily in his throat. He had already known that the girl was not ordinary, but her eyes confirmed his suspicions. Like the tips of her horns and like her needle-sharp claws, her eyes were bright red. They were as red as the spider lilies which grew in clusters in Masayomi's garden, so striking that, for a few moments, Masayomi could do nothing but stare. Karuko, too, was stunned into silence. She gulped at the young demon girl curled up against Masayomi's chest. She shuddered. Then, her face twisted with horror, she drew back. Surely you don't mean to bring her inside, Masayomi? Well, what else would you have me do? Perhaps she is a demon, but she's still just a child. You don't think I should leave her in the garden to freeze to death, do you? That would be the best place for her! She might look like a child, but she isn't. Not a human child, at least. I know you have a gentle spirit, but that's precisely why this girl, no, this creature, appeared in your garden. She must know that you're a soft touch. That's why she's come here. She's trying to take advantage of your kindness so she can strike you when your back is turned. Do you really think so? She doesn't look capable of hurting a fly, at least not in my estimation. She's much too small, and look how much she's shaking. I don't know about you, but she doesn't seem dangerous to me. Of course she doesn't seem like that. Cats always hide their claws before they pounce on their prey. They like to lull their targets into a false sense of security. All intelligent animals know the value of pretending to be things that they aren't. She's acting like this on purpose to garner your sympathy. You can't let yourself fall for it. That girl isn't a human no matter how much she might look like one. She's evil. If you let her stay healed, she'll destroy you. She'll curse you and your family for generations, and when she does, you'll wish that you had listened to me. Will she now? Masayomi continued to examine the girl, who seemed even more afraid of Karuko than Karuko was of her. She cringed away from Karuko and nuzzled her damp, cold cheek against the front of Masayomi's kimono. She was still shaking. Masayomi clicked his tongue in sympathy, then said, "Even if she is capable of all these vicious acts, that last one might be a bit beyond her capabilities." What do you mean? Are you underestimating her? I think you are overestimating her, my dear Karuko. She would be hard-pressed to curse my family for generations, given I have no children, and I don't think I have much longer left as it is. If I die in the ensuing years, it certainly won't be her fault. You know what I mean. Karuko scowled, his cheeks coloring in the face of Masayomi's light-hearted censors. No good can come of letting that monster stay with you. She's unnatural. Do you think so? She doesn't look unnatural to me, putting her horns and her claws to one side. She's a living being just like you or I. I can't think of any reason to fear her. Then you're a fool! Maybe I am. Faintly, Masayomi smiled. Would it be the first time I heard that? Though it does stink to hear you saying that of all people, Karuko. I apologize, but I'm afraid I must speak my mind. I always let you have your own way, but I will not back down on this matter. If you really want to take that girl in, then I'm afraid I will have to leave. I can't work under this roof while this monster is staying here. I refuse. Well, now, this is typical. Masayomi sighed as he examined the girl. Her eyelids had fallen shut once more. Had her fatigue overcome her fear? And it looked like she was sleeping. She nuzzled her head against Masayomi's chest, seeking out his warmth. Her clothes and her hair were both waterlogged, her little body alarmingly cold. Masayomi held her close, not caring that she was getting his clothes damp. His discomfort was immaterial when compared to this girl's suffering, and it was plain, just to look at her, that she had suffered. Masayomi was not going to let her suffer even more. My apologies, Karuko. I have no desire to send you away like this, but you are giving me no alternative. You have been a wonderful housekeeper, and I cannot thank you enough for your service, but I am not going to neglect a child in need for your peace of mind. That is something I simply cannot do. But... Forgive me, but there is nothing more to discuss. I understand this topic is upsetting you, but it's upsetting me too. I'm not prepared to become the monster that you accuse this girl of being. There you go. You should be nice and cozy now. Interesting, guys. He had to turn away his housekeeper. She's scared that little girl is about to, you know. I guess nobody's here. I guess they're all gone. Oh well. Might as well finish the story. Masayomi smiled at the girl who he had tucked up on a spare futon he had arranged beside his own. Masayomi had, after bringing the girl inside, taken her to the bathroom where he had stripped her of her garments and bathed her. He had sat the girl into the second wooden tub in his relatively spacious bathroom, scrubbing her pale back and soaping her long fair hair. Masayomi had wondered momentarily whether hair as fine as hers should have used different shampoo to the sort he was accustomed to. He had never seen anybody with such long blonde hair before, after all. After a moment's hesitation, however, Masayomi decided that what was good enough for him was good enough for her. He had cautioned the girl, however, to close her eyes before he had dumped the bucket of water upon her head to prevent any shampoo from getting into her eyes. Her arises may have been unusual, a bright bloody red, but Masayomi fancied they would sting just as his did if they were irritated. Masayomi had handled the girl as carefully as he could, but he had been unable to quell the constant fear any wrong move would harm her, particularly given she was so skinny. The girl had appeared small in her yukata, but she had been even smaller without it, stripped bare in the top, her angular shoulder blades and her concave chest exposed. She was so skinny, Masayomi had been able to see the indents of her ribs through her pale skin. There were a few cuts on her back too, wounds which seemed relatively recent because they had been dark with coagulated blood. This made Masayomi wonder once again whether she had been attacked by some wild beast or whether that had been the cause of her screaming earlier. She had sounded quite terrifying, the poor thing. Masayomi still didn't know the girl's name nor where she had come from, but he still felt for her. It was a shame that Karuko's illogical fear had overcome her, causing her to back away from the child as she was cursed. That was alright. Masayomi would have preferred it if Karuko were around. She would have made caring for the girl much easier, but he could get along well enough without her. Though he and his wife had never been blessed with any of their own children, they had taken care of their nieces and nephews, all on his wife's side, in the past. Masayomi had a degree of confidence in his ability to look after a child, even a very small, very skinny one. He had been momentarily stumped, however, when it came to dressing her. Masayomi had lived on his own for almost a decade, ever since Mariko's unexpectedly early passing, and he had no clothes which would fit somebody of such a storied stature. He did not want to dress her in her old clothes, but he had little choice. He had nothing else to offer her. Still, Masayomi had tried to dry her clothes as best as he could. He had placed them by the brazier to warm up, and had scrubbed off the dirt to the best of his abilities. Her clothes had certainly seen better days, but they would have to do for now. It was only a temporary measure in any case. He could look into buying new clothes for her the following morning. The following morning, however, seemed quite far away. For the present, Masayomi was content to sit by the girl, fresh-faced and a little flushed after her warm bath, as she lay on the futon. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and red, her golden hair spilled across the pillow like wax. It was still raining, but the storm had let up considerably when compared to earlier. The droplets which drummed against the tile roof did so in a way which was almost soothing. A steady pitter-patter which seemed to reassure the nameless girl. Her eyelids started to droop and she yawned, showing a mouthful of pointed teeth which would have scared Karuko senseless. Masayomi remained unmoved, however, by the girl's teeth. He smiled at her indulgently, running his fingers through her hair, and said, My, that was a big yawn. It sounds like you're tired. Do you want to get some rest? The girl didn't respond, but Masayomi took no offense. She hadn't replied to any of Masayomi's past inquiries either. He had been bathing her, dressing her, or when he had fed her a couple of dry persimmons from his pantry. Masayomi didn't think the girl was trying to be difficult on purpose. It seemed more likely she was shocked after everything which had happened, and was too overwhelmed to speak. That or she didn't understand Japanese. It was always a possibility like Haruko claimed, she was a demon child who had come down from the mountains. Masayomi didn't know what language demons spoke amongst themselves, but he doubted they would share a common language with the humans who lived at the base of the mountains. Why would they? Communicating with the girl might pose some difficulties, but Masayomi wasn't one to give up. He smiled at the girl indulgently as he said, Well, never you mind. You can sleep for as long as you want. You look like you can use it. I won't rouse you, not until you're fully rested. Please, make yourself as comfortable as possible, and if you need anything in the night, don't hesitate to wake me up. I'll be sleeping here, right next to you, so I can get you something to drink, or accompany you to the bathroom. Don't worry about disturbing me, even if I'm fast asleep. Just give me a poke, and I'll wake up. I don't need to be up for anything myself tomorrow morning, so we can both sleep in if we need to. Doesn't that sound nice? The girl remained mute, quietly observing Masayomi beneath her sweep of long, pale eyelashes. She seemed a bit hesitant, her eyes wide like a startled woodland animal's. Despite her horns and her claws, she reminded Masayomi a little bit of a rabbit, one of the wild ones she sometimes saw scampering about the woods. Masayomi smiled at this thought and gave her head another ruffle. Well, I'll leave you to it, little one. Sleep well if you can. Since the storm has died down a bit, it should be easier to get some rest. I think the sound of the falling rain is quite soothing myself. I don't know where you came from or how you found yourself in my garden, but I won't question it. That's not important right now. I just want you to be comfortable. You'll be in safe hands with me. I promise. Oh, this is so cute! This is a cute novel. Masayomi continued to serve the girl, something akin to fatherly compassion welling up inside his chest. He was feeling rather tired himself. The night's events had weighed upon him, and he wanted to go to bed, but something about the girl's eyes held him captive. He continued to kneel by her side, stroking her fair hair in an attempt to soothe her, when the girl blinked shyly. Then, in a very quiet voice, one which almost melted into the faint sound of the falling rain, she said, "Will you really look after me?" The girl's voice was very quiet, perhaps from a lack of use, and stuttered more than the melody played from an aged music box. Her Japanese was proficient enough. Masayomi could understand her at least, but the girl's insecurity was evident not just in her face, but in the way she tripped over her words. She sounded utterly lost, so small and sad that Masayomi couldn't help but pity her. He smiled, touched that she was making an effort to communicate, and said, "Of course I'll look after you. I wouldn't have brought you indoors if I didn't need to. I'd be an awful man if I let a young child like you catch your death out in the cold." You say that, but most humans would leave me. You think that I'm evil. The woman you were with, I don't think she liked me very much.
Huh. Well, maybe you have a point.
Masayomi sighed. He would have liked to tell the girl that everything would be fine. Of course, the people of Higashikawa would warm to her, if only they gave her a chance. But he didn't want to lie to her. That would have felt disrespectful. Garugo's always been a bit flighty. She puts a lot of stock in superstitions. I like to say she's the only person you'll meet like that, but I'm afraid I can't. I wouldn't be surprised if other people in the village took against you because of your appearance. But I won't.
You mean it?
I promise. Cross my heart and hope to die. Masayomi chucked lightly when he had last made a promise like this, and stroked the girl's cheek. Her cheek was flushed. Was she feverish? But Masayomi hoped her temperature would come down in time. Now she was indoors, safe and sound. The girl looked at Masayomi, blinking sluggishly, perhaps trying to discern, in her own childlike way, whether he was telling the truth. She stared as she stared, as if she meant to bore a hole through his skull. But her sleepiness overtook her, and she yawned, her red eyes squeezing shut. Tears began to bead upon her lower lashes, and Masayomi smiled. "I'll let you get some rest. You look like you can use it." "I don't want to keep you up, but there is something I would like to know. Do you have a name?" The girl opened her mouth, closed it. She frowned, her expression unreadable, shadows crossing her dainty features which for a few moments made her look almost foreboding. Before her brow creased apologetically, she shook her head. Masayomi was unsure whether he believed her. The demons Masayomi had heard about in folktales all possessed names, even the fearsome Shutendochi. But maybe there was a reason she didn't want to share it. Her clan, the demons living clans, might have forbidden her to share her name with humans. That, or perhaps her true name was too complicated for an ordinary human to pronounce. Whatever the case, however, this is quite the contrary. Masayomi needed some way to address her, so... Would you mind if I gave you a name then?
You can do that?
If you wouldn't mind. I can hardly keep calling you or girl. That'd be very rude. Everybody needs a name.
Even monsters? Even monsters, yes. Do you have any preferences?
No, I don't really know what humans are called. It's complicated.
Alright, can I name you myself then?
If it's not too much trouble.
It's no trouble at all. You know, my wife and I always did want to have children, but we were never blessed. I'm unsure whether it was a medical matter or if we were simply unlucky. But we did talk a lot about what we would call our children, if ever we had any. There was one name my wife was particularly fond of. She might not be around anymore, but I'm sure she'd be smiling up in heaven if one little girl was able to use it. What do you think about the name Rinka?
Oh, that's cute. Internet seems to be fine. Pretty much nobody's here. Let's continue though. Masayomi woke up early the following morning, despite the furor which had unfolded the night prior. It was Masayomi's custom to awake early. Though he had no job to attend, no particular responsibilities, he always found himself awaking with the chirping of the birds. He had been like this from a young age, ever since he was a boy. It was a habit he could not shake, even now. Perhaps the subconscious desire to enjoy every single second of life available had been ingrained into him, after suffering from endless illnesses in his youth. He wanted to appreciate his life as much as he could, though it was no longer true, he supposed, that he was devoid of all responsibilities. Now, he had Rinka to worry about. Rinka was lying on the spare futon beside him, wearing an oversized yukata of Masayomi's. Her left arm was flung out at an awkward angle, while her right was crunched up against her chest, her claws obscured by the fabric of her sleeves. In slumber, Rinka looked like an ordinary girl, were it not for the horns which protruded from her scalp, even more arresting than her gold hair. Masayomi would have taken her to be an ordinary child, just like any other. It seemed ludicrous to Masayomi, as he observed the sleeping Rinka, that Kaoruko had taken against her so bitterly, especially when Kaoruko was pregnant herself. Masayomi didn't think Kaoruko a cruel woman. She had done a lot for him, more than she needed to, but he was starting to wonder whether she wasn't awfully close-minded. Masayomi hoped the other villagers would be more understanding, but he had little hope. People can be cruel, but at least he would be there for Rinka. He just hoped his company would be enough. Masayomi watched Rinka for a few moments more, smiling a little somberly as she slept, her limbs sprawled out. He thought about waking her. It was a pleasantly sunny morning, not that the storm from last night had blown over, but decided against it. Rinka still needed time to recuperate. Masayomi decided his time would be spent... Masayomi decided his time would be best spent making a start on breakfast. Rinka was so small that Masayomi fancied she needed fattening up a bit. Masayomi rose from his futon with some difficulty, reaching for his cane, and padded lopsidedly to the kitchen. Once there, he examined his supplies, and when he did, he sighed. He was running rather low on ingredients. Though there was rice, there was always rice. It was a staple, and miso paste and a few basic condiments. He had barely any vegetables and no meat whatsoever. Masayomi thought Rinka would probably enjoy meat, in part because of her serrated teeth. They seemed designed for slicing through flesh, but she would have to wait for that. He had no choice but to prepare a vegetarian breakfast for her. At least he had eggs and some corn flour starch. That was better than nothing. Masayomi himself wasn't the best in the kitchen, but he knew enough to get by. He wasn't the sort of hopeless man who had to rely upon a woman to do everything for him, not like Kaoruko's Toshiyuki. Masayomi was able to whip up a respectable meal with the paltry ingredients he had. He boiled rice, cracked eggs, and fried sliced burdock and lotus roots. He served this alongside a hefty bowl of miso soup, which was devoid of tofu. He had run out, though he did sprinkle it with a liberal amount of green onion. Masayomi brought the food to the living room, where he was intercepted by Rinka. She padded down the hallway barefoot and looked at Masayomi purely.
What's going on?
Masayomi smiled indulgently at Rinka as he set down the food, the boiled rice with the eggs, the crispy burdock and lotus root, and the miso soup. Breakfast is what's going on. You need to eat a lot so you can be healthy.
Oh,
Rika stared at the food as she had never seen anything more luxurious. Masayomi knelt and began to serve himself, but Rika hung back. Shyly, she shifted from foot to foot, then mumbled,
Is this really for me?
Half of it is, yes. I don't know your taste, so I tried to make the miso soup less salty than usual. I probably shouldn't have used so much salt anyway. Karuko always says that it's bad for me. I usually prefer my eggs a little harder, but I made them a bit runny today. I think you youngsters prefer it like that. At the very least, I know my nieces do. Nothing can beat Mariko's onsen eggs. She's a much better cook than I am, but I helped out often enough that I know a few of her secrets. I'm not completely useless in the kitchen. Or at least I hope I'm not.
I don't think you're useless. This looks really good.
Rika spoke shyly, softly as she finally sat down, still scanning her food. Masayomi had taken care to plate it neatly, as though it were a feast fit for a daimyo.
I've never eaten food like this before.
You haven't? Rika shook her head.
I used to live in the mountains. Or I think I did. I don't remember very much. I don't think I ate food like this though. Mostly I ate meat.
So Masayomi's guess had been right. Those sharp teeth of hers weren't just for show. And what sort of meat did you eat exactly? Can you remember? Masayomi hoped that Rinka wouldn't say humans. That would make their future cohabitation rather difficult, but to his relief she didn't. Instead, her brow furrowed, she said,
I think rabbits and deer and anything else in the woods.
Ah, so you're used to eating game.
Is that what is it called?
Masayomi nodded. My food will be a bit less hearty than game, but it should be nutritious enough. I hope you like it.
I'm sure I will. Thank you.
It's no problem. Eat up now. There is a good girl. We have a busy day ahead of us. Rika nodded, then reached for her bowl of rice. She dug her claws into it, bypassing the chopsticks altogether, which made Masayomi stare. Oh no, we don't eat with our hands here.
We don't?
Masayomi shook his head, though he smiled as he did, to show he wasn't angry. If anything, he was more bemused. No, we use chopsticks. Look at these two thin pieces of wood I'm holding. You grip them like this. No, this. Masayomi rose from his side of the table with some difficulty. His left leg was still giving him grief, and settled himself down by Rinka's side. He took her right hand, which was shaking, and adjusted the chopsticks for her. There, you see.
Like this?
Well, close enough. I'm sure you'll get used to it in time. It's not so hard. Now, you need to dip your chopsticks into your rice like this. Masayomi sat by Rinka's side for a few moments, his own food ignored as he helped her come to terms with Japanese equidate. Rinka wasn't the tightest eater Masayomi had ever seen. She spilled a lot of rice on the table and down her front, but she was trying, and that was all that mattered. The intense look of concentration on her face as she tried to lever the boiled rice up to her lips was precious. Masayomi was so amused he had to stop himself from chuckling. He didn't think that Rinka would appreciate it. Masayomi did have to laugh, however, when Rinka dipped her chopsticks into her miso soup. No, you don't need to use chopsticks for that. Even the emperor would struggle to drink soup with chopsticks, and he's supposed to be the epitome of dignity. For that, you can use a spoon.
A spoon?
That's this utensil here with a rounded head. It would be a lot easier to scoop the soup up with this, don't you think?
I guess.
Rinka agreed, though she didn't sound wholly certain. She was better at using the spoon than the chopsticks, but she still looked unhappy about the whole business.
This is so difficult. You have too many rules.
Do you think so? Rinka nodded her head empathetically. I'm sorry, I should have thought this might be overwhelming to somebody who isn't used to it, but try not to worry. I'm sure you'll get the hang of it eventually. Rika made more progress of her breakfast, only spilling a little bit. She looked frustrated every time the rice slipped from her chopsticks and fell onto the table, but she was still doing well. Masayomi couldn't help but feel proud of her, almost he imagined like a real father would be. While Rinka continued to eat, Masayomi considered his plans for the day. Taking Rinka shopping for some spare clothes was high on his priority list. Though leery about going into the village, Masayomi knew Rinka would attract stares. Masayomi had no choice. If he wanted to take care of Rinka properly, he simply had to risk it. All children deserve to be clothed properly, and they deserve to be fed too. Masayomi's supplies had been running down, and the pantry was worryingly bare. Karuko should have gone shopping for him that day. With his game leg, it was difficult for Masayomi to make the journey into Higashikawa on his own, but Masayomi doubted Karuko would be putting in an appearance that day. Karuko was a woman of strong principles, and he knew she would never again set foot inside his home. Masayomi would have to manage everything himself. Venturing into the village was a daunting prospect when Masayomi's health was so fragile, but he thought he could handle it. His left leg was aching, but it wasn't unbearable. If he had his cane, he should be alright. Masayomi was less convinced, however, about Rinka. She would be an object of all sorts of stares, but Masayomi couldn't think of a single way to hide her horns. He considered putting a hat on her head, but the horns were too tall and too sharp. They would poke straight through any straw hat. He would simply have to pray that nobody noticed Rinka. Maybe if she stuck close enough to his back, they could avoid too many unpleasant stares. It wasn't ideal, but it seemed like the best plan he had. Masayomi calculated the distance to the village in his head as Rinka polished off her breakfast. She was eating quite heartily, so much so a few stray grains of rice stuck to her cheeks. Masayomi smiled to see this and let in. I'm glad you enjoy my cooking so much, but do take care. The food is supposed to go in your mouth, see? Gently, he swiped the stray grain from Rinka's face. Then, once she had finished her food, he said, Now, how do you feel about going on a bit of an adventure? Shit, nobody's watching. Literally a 2-minute view duration. Should I even continue? Oh, forget it. I'll just keep continuing. Masayomi had hoped that his foray into the village would be as quick and painless as possible without any unwanted interrogations. He was worried that Rinka's unusual appearance would make people stare, but Masayomi was accustomed to that. Masayomi himself had drawn many curious eyes, and he had wandered around the village, supporting himself with a cane when he was not yet in his 20s. Masayomi had courted even more stares, meanwhile, some of them curious, while others had been overtly hostile when the war had commenced. Masayomi's 2 older brothers had been drafted for the war, as had several of his acquaintances. Masayomi himself, however, had been acquitted, owing to his sickly constitution and his left leg, though he had been in the right age for it, only 27. Masayomi wasn't sorry that he had enlisted. He was a reserved man by nature, and he hated the thought of causing anybody any harm. That it had made him something of a social pariah. He had become accustomed to the whispers whenever he had walked down the streets, the gazes which bore not so subtly into his back when he went about his business. He knew, though everybody had been too polite to say it to his face, that everybody was wondering what he was doing, idling away his time while his brothers went to fight, to kill, to be killed. Neither of Masayomi's brothers had returned from the war. Masayomi thought it was a terrible shame, and it was awfully sad, given they had both been married, but perhaps the general populace thought this was for the best. Though they had died, they had at least died in glory for the sake of their country. Masayomi, meanwhile, had continued to live in ignominy, the source of shame for both himself and his remaining family. At least his parents had to live with the shame of having it in for himself for too long. His father had died not long after he had received the news about both his sons' deaths, his mother following soon after. Officially, they had died from illness, but Masayomi wondered whether they had not died from grief instead. These thoughts began to tail him as he led Rinka into Higashikawa, his hand curled tight about hers, her body half hidden behind his own. Masayomi always felt gloomy whenever he wandered the village. He couldn't help it. It had been down these streets that he had wandered in his youth with his brothers, but his constitution had allowed it, of course. He would never be able to do that now, though. They were both gone, as were his parents, as was Mariko. For many years, Masayomi had been on his own. It was not so now, however. He had Rinka, and he was determined to protect her. Masayomi squeezed Rinka's head tightly with his own, as if this might be able to shield her from any glares, and for the most part, he succeeded. Rinka clung so hard to Masayomi that few people noticed her, but one woman did. She happened to catch Rinka's eye, and then she yelped, dropping her bag full of groceries onto the ground. Onions and carrots spilled everywhere, rolling across the stones, while Masayomi frowned. He would have bent if his joints were up to it to help the woman pick up her spilled goods, but he feared he wouldn't have been able to get back up again. Masayomi still offered to help, however, and offered the woman refused. She took one look at Rinka with her red eyes and her horns and shuddered. No, thank you. I'm quite alright. You don't need to worry about me. The woman hurriedly gathered her spilled onions and carrots, which she stuffed hastily into her bag. Then she rose to her feet and dashed off, pausing only once to glance behind her shoulder at Rinka. Her face was white, as though she had seen a ghost, or maybe that was because she was wearing a lot of powder? Well, at least she had to throw salt over her shoulder as she departed. Masayomi was finding it increasingly difficult, however, to be optimistic. The textile shop felt like a long way away, and he was afraid even more people would start staring. His leg, meanwhile, smarted horribly. Rinka grasped Masayomi's hand even more lightly. Masayomi couldn't help but note that she was shaking and muttered, "Did I do something wrong?" Of course you didn't, dear. Why did that woman glare at me then? She looked so mad. Maybe she was having a stressful day. Try not to pay too much heed. But she looked like she really hated me. It was scary. I'm sure she didn't hate you, dear. You've not done anything to deserve being hated. Now, let's try and get you kitted out in some new clothes. Maybe that will cheer you up. Alright. Rinka didn't sound or indeed look entirely certain, but she let Masayomi lead her to the textile shop regardless. Masayomi did think about buying Rinka Western clothes, blouses, skirts, and the like, which were so popular lately. A lot of local children preferred these sorts of clothes, as did many of their mothers. Masayomi's mother wouldn't have been caught dead in a skirt which showed her these, and Masayomi's wife Mariko had been similarly conservative. But Masayomi supposed the times were changing. Mariko was something of an oddity among the young women in Higashikawa. In that day, she always wore kimonos. It was what she was the most comfortable in, or so she said, until Shiyuki confirmed it too. That didn't change the fact that not even Higashikawa was immune to innovation, however. While Kawano was decidedly more modern, with a much larger variety of shops, some modern stores have begun to pop up in Higashikawa over the last decade. Shops which sold electrical appliances, CDs, and even heeled shoes. Well, I don't think CDs existed in 1972. Remember, this takes place in the early 70s. Yeah, probably cassettes. The cassettes exist in the 70s. Masayomi always shook his head whenever he saw shoes like that. He found it hard to fathom how anybody would walk in them. He didn't understand the latest fashion trends at all, but maybe Rinka would. Rinka had been wearing a kimono when Masayomi had found her, however, and she seemed even more baffled by modern conveniences than Masayomi was. She had trailed Masayomi into the kitchen after they had finished eating, and she had seemed a little afraid of the fridge and how it hummed. Masayomi thought it better he buy Rinka a kimono instead. At least she would know how to put that on. Going to the textile shop was something of an ordeal, however. The shopkeeper kept shooting Rinka anxious looks as if she was afraid she might eat her. Not Masayomi supposed that this was exclusive to the textile shop. He was sure he would have had the same problems wherever he went. Eventually, he he was able to buy a few choice pieces for Rika. She kept her favorite of the kimonos on while Masayomi paid for it, and he departed for the grocer's. He was able to buy the produce he needed with minimal fuss, maybe because Rika had taken to hiding behind his back so nobody noticed her. Once Masayomi had finished, he meant to return home, but something stopped her. A woman was calling to him, a woman he recognized. That was Mrs. Miyake, who worked at the butcher's with her husband. Okay. Is anybody in the chat right now? I don't know if anyone's in the chat. I don't think anybody's here. I honestly don't think anybody's here. Nobody's really talking. No one's really chatting. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth talking. Shit. Like, literally nobody's here right now. I've been reading this for over an hour with no reactions, no nothing. I don't know. Is it even worth it? Would you all prefer it if I play something, you know, popular? Like, this is a stream that's just coming out of my heart. I don't know. I don't know. Is it even worth it? Nobody's here. I think I should just leave, you know? Ah, forget it. I'll just continue. I got this far. I'm just gonna continue. Masayomi recognized her at once by her brown hair, which was tied into a sensible bun, in her face, which was plump and surprisingly smooth despite her being only a few years younger than Masayomi. Masayomi wasn't particularly close to anybody in the village save Karuko, and even that was debatable, but he quite liked Mrs. Miyake. She was a guy woman who sometimes saved extra beef tendon or tongue for Masayomi, it being one of his favorites. Under normal circumstances, Masayomi would have been pleased to run into Mrs. Miyake, but these circumstances were anything but. Rika was still clinging to Masayomi's back, and he was anxious to get back home. As he was anxious to get back, and he was anxious to get them back home without any incident. Sorry, my English is not good today. Masayomi knew that he could hardly ignore Mrs. Miyake, however. Their eyes had met, and she was now making a beeline towards him. Turning away would have been rude. Masayomi forced a smile and said, "Hello, Mrs. Miyake, how are you doing today?" "Well, I'm doing alright. I can't complain, even if my back's been playing me up a bit lately. I suppose it would be unfair of me to complain about that, however. What with your, well, you know." Mrs. Miyake glanced pointedly at Masayomi's cane, and he sighed. Masayomi was too old to be flustered by comments oblique or implied about his cane, and in any case he was at an age where it wasn't unusual for him to use one. He rarely drew curious looks now. Masayomi had known Mrs. Miyake for some time, however, and she was conscientious about it to an uncomfortable degree. Most people did not remark upon it, but Mrs. Miyake always did. Masayomi knew she was trying to be considerate, but it was also deliberate. It made him feel even more uneasy. He knew not to have to explain that without sounding rude, however, and he was glad that Mrs. Miyake seemed more curious about his cane than Rinka, who was still standing beside him. "It's alright, my leg has been playing up too much lately. I'm feeling quite fit, in fact." "I'm very glad to hear it. I know you've been through the wars, Masayomi. Not literally, of course. Of course. But it's nice to see you out and about. You don't usually come into the village on your own. I thought you usually sent Karuko to do your chores for you." "I do, yes, but Karuko was otherwise indisposed." "Indisposed?" Mrs. Miyake frowned. "She isn't unwell, is she?" "Not quite." "There aren't any issues with the baby, are there?" "Not as far as I'm aware. She was simply busy. I had to take care of my shopping today, and speaking of which, I should be getting back home. I have some fish here and I need to get it out of the sun. It'll spoil otherwise." "Oh yes, of course. I don't want to keep you. I was just curious. I'll get out of your head now, but..." "Oh my!" Mrs. Miyake gasped. It was only now that she noticed Rinka. attired in her new kimono, who was peering out from behind Masayomi's back. She blinked and then said, "Who is this little one, Masayomi? Where does she come from?" "Well," Masayomi frowned. He knew he couldn't tell Mrs. Bayaki the truth, that will only startle her, so he instead hastened to tell what he hoped was a convincing lie. It didn't seem like Mrs. Miyaki had noticed Rika's horns just yet. Perhaps this situation could still be salvaged. She's one of my nieces. I'm looking after her for a bit for my sister-in-law. Her name's Rika. A niece, is it? Mrs. Miyaki peered at Rika curiously. Now that's funny. I've seen her before, and little Kimiko, but I've never met this Rika. I didn't know you have any other nieces. Well, I do. Masayomi answered stoutly, perhaps a little too curly. Was he being rude? But he mostly wanted to stop Mrs. Bayaki from chattering. Rika had pressed herself against his back once more. Masayomi could feel her shaking. She must have been uneasy. Now, I really am sorry, but I must go. The fish will spoil. Of course, I don't mean to be a busybody, but Rika doesn't look very much like Mariko. I only got a glimpse of her. She must be very shy. But her hair... Mrs. Miyaki brow furrowed. It's nothing like anything I've seen before. It's so fair! Was her father a foreigner, maybe? She's awfully striking! Something like that. Masayomi replied vaguely, hoping that this would shut the conversation down for good. Tiring of this topic and in an uncomfortable amount of pain, his left leg had started to ache horribly. He turned an apology on his lips when... "Oh my!" As Mrs. Miyaki gasped. Masayomi must have turned too quickly, and Rika hadn't been able to shift with him. She had taken an uneasy step back, tottering in her sandals, and in that moment, Mrs. Miyaki saw Rika properly. She saw her long golden hair, which fluttered around her shoulders like corn. But what in the world is wrong with her? Your little girl's a monster! And she also saw Rika's horns, bloody red at the tips, and pointed like a deadly predator's teeth. Masayomi could not blame Mrs. Miyaki for being surprised, but he wished she hadn't been quite so loud about it. Mrs. Miyaki's fearful yelp had been loud enough to draw curious eyes. Passers-by who had been walking along in the springtime sunshine contacted chatter to one another paused. Mothers with children halted in their tracks to turn their heads to Rika's direction, as did a cluster of elderly men who had been talking, their heads bowed by the fishmongers. They all stared, their gazes unfriendly and inhospitable. It was long until the whispers began to break out, then moments later, the cheers. Everybody was looking at Rika. "I want to hug her!" Oh. They were all staring. The young girl's eyes, meanwhile, were wet with tears. She must have been terrified. For all the people of Higashikawa called Rika a monster, she seemed far more scared of them than they were of her. Damn. Yeah, that's right, damn! Masayomi cursed under his breath. He was not one given to vulgarities, but for once he couldn't help himself. This was the last thing both he and Rika needed. His hand curled tightly about Rika's, hoping to soothe her, but it might have been too late for that. She was shaking. "Come on, Rika." Masayomi spoke to Rika softly, trying to smile, though it was rather strained. "Let's go back home. I think that we've long since outstayed our welcome."
I'm really sorry, Masayomi.
Rika. Masayomi looked at Rika worriedly. The young girl was sniffling, her red eyes welling with tears, bright red tears, which coursed down her cheeks like rainwater. Rika had been silent during their journey back home, her sharp teeth worrying against her lower lip in an attempt not to cry. After returning, however, and taking solace within Masayomi's spacious living room, Rika could no longer control herself. Her eyes might have been red, but so were her under eyes. They were flushed from her tears, and her fingers, clenched into fists, were shaking almost as much as her shoulders.
I'm really sorry.
The little girl apologized once more in a wavering voice which broke Masayomi's heart. "Now, what's all this? Why are you crying so much? And why in the world are you apologizing? Did you do something bad?"
You know I did something bad!
"Do I? Now that's funny. I can't seem to recall you doing anything particularly naughty.
too. The villagers will be mean to you, and I don't want that. I might be a demon, but you didn't do anything wrong. It's not fair.
Masumi smiled gently, touched by Rika's self-righteous burst of anger. It was the first time he had seen the young girl outraged. Rather than a fearsome sight, however, Rika was instead acting like any other child her age, frustrated by the inflexibility of adults, but utterly powerless to change it. Masumi could tell that Rika was not upset on her own behalf. She seemed to regard it as a matter of course that the villagers would turn against her, that they would all despise her. Instead, she was frightened that Masumi would be tarred by association, that the villagers would revile him for daring to look after a demon. Rika seemed to consider it her fault that Masumi had been targeted, but this was a burden too heavy for a child to bear. Masumi did not want Rika to feel responsibility for the attitudes of the villagers. Their silly, superstitious beliefs were wholly outside of her control, and that was what Masumi was determined to tell her. I understand now. I thought the way the villagers carried on would hurt you, but to worry so much about me? That's very sweet. Masumi rested his plan atop Rika's fair hair and gave her head what he hoped was a reassuring ruffle. But I'm afraid your worry is wasted on me. I don't think I need it. I'm old enough to withstand a few malicious whispers and some unpleasant stares. I've dealt with much, much worse in my lifetime, so please don't fret. I'm the adult in this situation. It's my job to look after you, not the other way around. Now, look here. Nothing that happened today was your fault. You didn't do anything wrong, so there is no need for you to apologize.
Even though I caused so many problems?
You didn't cause any problems. You aren't the one who started making a scene, did you? You didn't make so much as a peep. Everybody else was acting silly. They were all making far too much of a fuss.
They made a fuss because I'm different, though.
And that's on them, not you. You can't help what you are, so it would be silly to hate you for it. I can't speak for the other villagers, but I think they're being awfully close-minded, especially given we live in the 20th century. It isn't the Meiji era no more. They are being awfully unfair, but that isn't your fault. None of this is.
But what if you start hating me eventually?
What? Masumi's eyes widened. He frowned, his head resting on the crown of Rika's head, and said, "Why do you think I'd do something like that? Do you really have so little faith in me?"
No, that isn't it! I think you're a really, really nice person! I don't think you want to hate me, but what if you can't help yourself? Other people might be mean to you because of me. They might leave you like your maid. What did you hate me then?
Masumi smiled gently, brushing a few stray tears from Rika's cheeks, then said, "You're being very insistent about this. It almost sounds like you want me to hit you, so I'll cast you outside."
Wouldn't that be easier for you? Then you wouldn't have to take care of me and people wouldn't avoid you either. Maybe your maid would come back too. You wouldn't have to be alone.
That's very considerate, dear, but I'm not alone. I have you. Rika gasped. Her red eyes widened, yet more tears beating upon her lower lashes. In the spotty sunlight which filtered in through the windows, her tears seemed to glow just like liquid gold. She bowed her head. Then her voice even louder than before.
Masumi!
Rika threw herself upon her new guardian, winding her skinny arms about his back in a time-worn hug. Man, this was... I'm just reading it for myself now. Alright, y'all are still here. That's nice. Thanks, Ignis, for sticking around. You're a real one. You're a real sunshine. Thank you, Ahmed, for the super chat. MYR, what? What country is that? Sorry if I was complaining earlier about the viewership. I feel like the story's underrated, and like the fact barely anybody's onto the streams. Like, but I'm gonna still stream even if there's one person left.
Alright? Even if there's only one person watching this right now, I'm going to read it for them. Because that's what a sunshine does. I love you all. I love you all. Very much so. But thanks again, Ahmed, for the super chat. It means a lot to me. You really didn't have to give me $1, but that's nice that you sunshines like to look out for me. Though his trip into the village had been nothing short of disastrous, the rest of Masayomi's week went by in a relatively uneventful manner. He stayed indoors with Rinka, preparing her simple meals and tucking her into bed at night. Rinka, as it transpired, had a rudimentary understanding of hiragana and could only read a small handful of kanji. Wanting to broaden her horizons and feeling a pang of nostalgia for his school teacher days, Masayomi started to teach Rinka how to read. He repurposed the children's books stashed away in the storage room, which Mariko had bought for the children they had never had, and sat with Rinka on the veranda, tracing the large, blocky characters with his index finger and going over their pronunciation. Rinka was a patient child, and she listened to Masayomi attentively. She never pulled silly faces, as other children might have, or complained about being bored. She was an avid scholar, though even she could start to tire of looking through kanji all day. When Masayomi saw that Rinka's attention was flagging, he would suggest that they take a turn around the garden. Rinka always perked up at this suggestion. She adored the garden and would stare with wide, curious eyes at all the flora that Masayomi pointed out. Masayomi was unsure whether she had fallen afoul of a wild animal in his expansive garden. How else would she have received those scars? But if she had, it wasn't enough to quell Rinka's adventurous spirit. Rinka liked sitting indoors with Masayomi well enough, and she especially liked sitting on the veranda, but she enjoyed exploiting the garden even more. Masayomi tried to spend as much time with Rinka as he could, which wasn't particularly difficult. As an old man with no surviving family, he had precious few demands upon his time. Before Rinka had come into his life, Masayomi had whiled away his days in a leisurely fashion, reading books, dabbling with poetry, and dashing off letters to old acquaintances who lived further afield than his aching joints and game leg allowed him to travel. Masayomi's only real companion during those days had been Karuko, but she hadn't stopped by since Rinka's arrival. Masayomi missed Karuko's cooking, which had been far superior to his own, and he missed having another adult about the house with whom he could converse. He especially liked to hear Karuko's accounts of her sister's children and of her own pregnancy, but he didn't necessarily miss her risque attitude. For such a young woman, she had only been 26. Karuko was awfully standoffish. The house wasn't as tidy as it had been with Karuko around, but Masayomi thought that was a small price to pay for Rinka's happiness. Karuko had not in any case been a constant companion, not like Rinka was. Karuko had always returned to her own home at the close of her day, but Rinka never did. Her home was with Masayomi, and he was more than happy to accommodate her. The time had passed slowly and peaceably, with little of note occurring. Masayomi was getting along just fine with Rinka, and he did rather enjoy seeing her progress as she stumbled on her way through the stack of children's books he had to hand. The only occasions Masayomi was bidden to leave Rinka was when he went to the village to purchase rice and soy sauce and tea leaves. Masayomi didn't go into the village often, however. The other villagers now gave him a wide berth, and the shopkeepers who had once been friendly were curt and blunt when dealing with him. Masayomi didn't appreciate being made to feel like a leper, though he supposed it was something which would have happened regardless as he grew older. Most elderly people were made to feel like burdens in their twilight years, whether they housed demonic children or not. This change in attitude did bother Masayomi somewhat, but it was the sort of bother he could easily brush aside. He was too old to care overly much about what people thought of him. Masayomi had to limit his trips to the village for another, rather more practical reason beyond whispered rumors of her feelings. His joints did not ache as much as they had in the early spring, but they were still giving him some difficulties. He didn't want to risk making too many long journeys, not when his body felt the strain of it for days after. It would have been easier to make the trip to Higashikawa if he could drive, but Masayomi had never learned. He feared the strain would have been too much on his leg, and his arms had also begun to shake. He was hesitant when it came to new technology in general, and even struggled to use the rice cooker which Karuko had bought him. Masayomi was getting along well enough, however, despite his limited mobility.
There were a few hiccups with his newfound domestic life with Rinka, but it was on the whole a pleasant experience. She was like the daughter he had never been able to have, the daughter that Moriko would have adored if only she had lived long enough to see her. Rinka might not have borne any physical similarities to Masaomi or Moriko. Her hair was still distinctively golden, her eyes bright red, but she was sweet and kind and mild-mannered, just as Masaomi wanted to imagine any daughter of his and Moriko's would have been. By simply existing, Rinka brought light into Masaomi's life, which once had been dull and wan, so gray and unexciting, and for that Masaomi was truly grateful. Rinka herself seemed not to be aware of how much she brightened up Masaomi's life, but maybe that was for the best. Masaomi had no desire to put too much pressure on the poor girl. He simply wanted to live with her, side by side, day by day, as the time slowly passed about them.
Oh! Oh, that's cute. We're about to see Rinka's side of the story. Okay. How are we doing, Sunshines? How are we doing? But hey, lurking is a part of you to make you show up support. I mean, yeah. There's been a lot of commotion recently about Twitch views. You know, VTubers have actually been supporting lurkers. You know, Twitch doesn't think lurkers even matter anymore. They're trying to take them off the viewership numbers, which in my opinion is that's just scummy. I do think that they should count, and they should. And you know, my good friend, one of my good, not friend, but like we have talked in Twitter before, and she's liked my comments. But Deme, she's into, she's been talking about that, and yeah, that's something. Anyway, get back to the story. Rika hadn't been back to Higashikawa since her first disastrous outing, where she had anxiously clutched the back of Masayomi's kimono. It had been several months since then, but the experience had stayed with her. When Rika went to sleep at night, curled up on her futon beside Masayomi, she often dreamt of her uncomfortable encounter with Higashikawa's villagers. She saw them glaring at her as if it were superimposed upon her eyelids, some sort of grotesque tattoo. The men and the women all stared, and the little children too. Some of the bystanders were wearing traditional Japanese clothes as Masayomi did, kimonos with patterns and long fluttering sleeves, while some of them wore curious clothes Rinko was unfamiliar with, shirts and skirts and patterned dresses. Some of the women had straight hair, while others teased their hair into curls. Some of them wore their hair tied up, others down, and some of the men had strange lenses balanced on their nose which magnified their eyes so they looked like insects. These men and women and children were all distinct, all unique, but they were united in one common aspect. They all, without any exceptions, glowered at Rinka. They all hated her. They despised her. They wished she was dead. And late at night, when Rinka lay on her futon, their noxious whispers began to infiltrate their sight, playing upon her anxieties like the strings of a shamisen. In her dreams, though they were more like nightmares really, the villagers did more than just guap. They did more than stare, and they did much more than whisper. They shouted obscenities at Rinka, and they threw stones at her. They were cruel, even crueler than the shouty creatures that dwelt upon the mountains who were supposed to be Rinka's family. Rinka had already run away from one danger, but now she found herself embroiled in even more hatred. It felt as if she was destined to be disliked whether she went. Rinka was anxious as the day passed, fearful that the villagers might band together to haul her out of Masayomi's home, where they would then descend upon her. But days passed, and Rinka's worst fears never did come to pass. The villagers left Rinka and Masayomi alone. They might have been vicious in Rinka's dreams, with sharp eyes and sharp teeth, spouting sharp words from their cruel and cunning tongues, but in actuality it seemed like they were cowards. They kept their distance, afraid perhaps that Rinka would harm them. Well, that suited Rinka just fine. Rinka had no real desire to spend any time with the villagers. She was young, but her sense of self-preservation was developed enough that she knew to avoid danger, but she did worry about Masayomi. She did not like that she was being ostracized because of her. And Rinka was sensible enough to know that he was being ostracized.
Her presence was making his life more difficult. Yet Masayomi never said this. Rika was unsure whether he even thought it. He was in such fair spirits. Perhaps she was worrying over nothing? Masayomi seemed happy enough that as he taught Rika how to read, how to write, and maybe that was enough of a reward for him. Masayomi lived a simple life, and he seemed not to want for much else. Rika tried to take solace in this as the days unwound about her slowly and lackadaisically. It was easier to forget about the villagers and about how they had scorned her when she was with Masayomi. He made everything more bearable. Rika rather enjoyed her lessons with him. It was something to do, and Masayomi's eyes always lit up as he instructed her. It seemed like he had a passion for being a teacher. Apparently, it had once been his profession. He had taught at a local school in Higashikawa for some years, more than 3 decades, before his poor health had forced him to resign early. It seemed as if though Masayomi was going back to his roots. Teaching was Masayomi's passion, and he clearly excelled at it. Rika thought that the children who had been taught by Masayomi must have been very fortunate indeed. He was kind, patient, and he never lost his temper. Lessons with Masayomi did not feel like a chore. They were fun, though not even Rika could always be the diligent, dutiful student. Not even Masayomi, meanwhile, could always play the role of Rika's educator. The weather began to cool, and as it did, Masayomi's joints began to play him up. He spent more time sleeping, leaving Rika to her own devices. Rika did not much mind this, however. She quite liked padding through Masayomi's home in the early hours of this morning, as the faint autumn sunlight spilled in through the windows. It was during one such quiet morning when Masayomi was asleep that Rika made an acquaintance, quite by accident. She was sitting on the veranda, looking out over the garden, one of yesterday's rice balls in her hand. Masayomi had made a batch of them with Rika's help, all filled with kombu. There had been several rice balls left over, and Rika had liberated one of them from the fridge that morning. The fridge was an object of fascination to Rika, much like the other appliances in Masayomi's kitchen. The boxy rice cutter and the gas stove with the hobs. Rika had never seen anything like them in the mountains. She had been a bit afraid of the fridge at first. It had held like a malevolent monsters. But now she knew how convenient it was. She was thankful for it. It was thanks to the fridge that she had been able to sip cool, refreshing barley tea all summer. Masayomi had kept it chill especially for her, just as he had chilled the rice balls. Rika picked at her rice ball, all while swinging her slender legs to and fro. It was early autumn, and the leaves had yet to fall out of the trees. The hedgerows looked healthy enough, and there were even a few flowers poking through the grass, alongside a slew of weeds. Masayomi's garden had never been the neatest, but it had rather gone to seed over the summer. Masayomi was often too tired to take care of his garden himself, and none of the villagers would do it for him. In the past, he had relied on the help of the locals to weed his garden several times a year, but they all avoided him now. Rika thought this was an awful shame, especially when Masayomi's spacious garden boasted so many trees and so many flowers. Rika was beginning to wonder whether she shouldn't weed the garden herself. She was more spry than Masayomi and could have managed it easily when a curious rustling from one of the hedges made her pause. She frowned. What was that? Rika wondered whether she should creep closer to say her curiosity, but fear held her back. What if it was one of the villagers? Had they come to harass her? Rika thought this unlikely, but all the same. She kept her eyes trained upon the hedge, her brow furrowed. Her rice ball rested upon her lap, only half eaten, scattering her patterned kimono with grains of rice. She stared intently, her red eyes wide, when... Oh! Rika saw it. A little head had poked out of the hedge, a head which was preceded by a little less than little body. The head was topped with 2 triangular ears, and from the rear of the quadruped creature, Rika could see a long white tail. The creature was white all over, like a snowball, and very fluffy, so much so it looked a bit like a cotton ball. Rika recognized this creature as a cat, though she had little experience with them. The only wild animals Rika had seen growing up deep in the mountains were rabbits and wolves and the occasional deer. She knew knew cats because Masayomi had told her about them, but she had never seen one before, not at such close quarters. She might have passed a few strays during her visit to Higashikawa, but she had been so anxious she hadn't been able to properly appreciate her surroundings. Rika was doing nothing more than strenuous at the present, however, than sitting in Masayomi's garden, which gave her ample opportunity to appreciate the cat. It really was a sweet thing, even if it was a bit on the large side. Its belly was rope-tuned enough that it almost dragged along the ground as it approached, its legs too short and squat to properly support it. Rika knew not who the cat belonged to, but at least one thing was plain: it had been well loved. It couldn't have been a stray. It was too portly. It must have been out for a stroll, and it seemed the cat had hit the jackpot. Its eyes, they were a light pale blue, zoomed in on the rice ball in Rika's lap. Then it darted forth, though maybe dart was not quite the right word. The cat was too big to dart. Instead, it enabled its blue eyes bright and its tail quivering with excitement. Rika had half expected the cat to draw away from her, hissing. Her last trip to Higashikawa had stayed with her, but the cat did not seem to possess any silly prejudices, not like the villagers. It saw that Rika was alone, and it saw that she was not a threat. It saw, too, the rice ball in her lap, and needed no other reason to approach her. The cat purred as it padded towards Rika. It hopped up onto the veranda in a surprisingly fluid manner given its girth, then butted its head gently against Rika's arm. Rika giggled a little, enchanted by the white fluffy creature, and said,
Why, hello there. It's nice to meet you too. Do you want to be my friend?
The cat mouthed in response, then gave Rika's arm another nudge. Rika giggled. She knew perfectly well what the cat wanted, even if it couldn't directly communicate with her. She broke off a piece of her rice ball, then held it out to the cat.
Do you want this? Yeah.
The cat purred, more excitedly this time, and extended a paw, reaching out for the rice ball. Rika was too fast, however. She had preempted this and drew back, the sleeve of her kimono fluttering. Not so fast. Rika cheated gently, in the same sort of voice Masayomi used on her when she made a mistake with her reading.
I don't think you need more feeding. You're already so big. You're at no risk of going hungry.
The cat peered once more, though it sounded malcontented. Had she upset it? Perhaps it disliked having the rice ball held out to it only to have the prize sniped away. It must have seemed rather unfair. Rika watched the cat closely and nudged her arm again, purring once more, as it did, more sweetly this time, in a glowing sort of way. It must have been trying to endear Rika to it. The cat was being awfully transparent, but Rika appreciated how straightforward it was being. The cat was nothing like most humans. It at least was honest and upfront with its wants. Rika supposed she could relate to that. She wasn't a human either. She thought humans were very strange, what with their inflexible manners and their false smiles. Humans could not be trusted, Masayomi accepted. But maybe she could trust this cat. She had already given up on making friends with any children her own age, but perhaps she could be friends with this cat, even if it did belong to someone else.
Alright then, you convinced me.
I really shouldn't be doing this. Masayomi said I should eat more myself.
Oh, fine. You're cute, so I'll allow it. I hope you like rice.
Rika held the rice ball back to the cat, who instantly perked up. Rika had decided the cat was a girl, but though she hadn't conducted a thorough examination, mewed again, more sweetly than before, and accepted Rika's offering from her outstretched fingers. The cat did not shrink away from Rika's claws. She didn't look at all afraid. Instead, she ate neatly and sweetly from Rika's head, her pink tongue lapping against Rika's fingers, so she giggled. Once the cat had finished, Rika rested a hand upon the cat's head in much the same way Masayomi did with her. She was curious about whether the cat would finally recoil, having accomplished her goal, but the cat did not. Instead, she remained, nuzzling her cheek against Rika's palm. Softly, Rika smiled. Then, in a gentle voice, she said,
Yes, that's right. You're such a good girl. Do you know who's a good girl? Meow. That's right. It's you.
Rika giggled. She had eaten rabbits before, and deer, but she had no desire to make this cat a meal. The cat was much too sweet, and she really was soft.
She was so white and downy, it made Rika wonder. I don't know your name, but I thought you could tell me. So why don't I call you Snowy? Do you like that? I'm glad. Rika smiled, feeling rather soothed by their new friend. She knew Snowy must have belonged to one of Higashikawa's villagers, but she didn't want to dwell upon that. For the present at least, Snowy was her friend. She belonged to Rika. And as Snowy butted her hand against Rika's hand, Rika was offered a degree of happiness the likes of which she'd never known before.
Oh, that wasn't my Sumi's perspective? Oh, we got two. It's been switching up a bit, I guess. After Rika had started to live under Masumi roof, that an unexpected commotion occurred. Masumi had been sitting in the living room, flipping through a hefty tome of folktales. Though Masumi typically preferred reading murder mysteries, he had taken to pulling deep stories from the Edo period about demons, particularly the fierce demons which had populated Mongol. After taking in Rika, Masumi had wanted to expand his immunity with the knowledge of demons, in the hopes he could better understand her. Masumi wasn't having much luck with the stories he had been using. However, the demons in the ebi-hime were all wicked flesh eaters who acted without any mercy, branding humans into bloody chunks with their teeth and claws. Rika wasn't at all like that. She was so dissimilar to the demons of legend, it was perplexing. Though Masumi was pleased, of course, that Rika had never tried to tear out his intestines, and would have introduced a brand new challenge to living alongside her. Rika, meanwhile, was outdoors. It was a warm day and she always enjoyed wandering about in the garden, making rounds with the flowers and watching the carp as they scudded about in the ornamental pond. Everything was calm. It was quiet and peaceful. Dust motes dancing gently in the sun's light, which shone through the windows. It wasn't yet midday, and the sun had yet to reach the apex of the sky. Though it was warm, it was pleasantly so, not unbearable, as the muggy haze of summer often was. Masumi was content to relax, occasionally setting his book aside to sip from a cup of refreshing barley tea which was set by his side. But a scream from the garden made him start. What in the world was going on? Masumi cast his novel to one side, no longer caring about the culprit of the complicated clothes room murder, and rose to his feet as quickly as he was able. Masumi had to use his cane to support himself. His legs were trembling so badly, both his knees, meanwhile, were aching. Masumi had dealt with his pain in his joints for several years already, though this pain often dulled during warmer weather. It was a worrying sign that his legs still ached so much in the early spring when the trees were festooned with cherry blossoms and the sun had begun to chase away the winter's chill. But Masumi tried to push the concerns about his ailing body to one side. His own discomfort didn't matter. He was far more concerned with Rinka. What had made her scream? Masumi humbled through his house, wincing every time he set his left foot down on the door. He left the living room where he had been sitting and reached the veranda, dragging his left leg behind him, his wooden cane striking the floorboards with a series of dull tugs. Straining his eyes against the sun, it was a warm, bright day. The sky had peerless, powdery blue. Masumi looked out into his garden. Then he gasped. Rinka was slumped onto the ground, her legs splayed. It looked as though she had fallen while at play or...
What's wrong with you? Why don't you get up? Aren't you meant to be a monster? You should try and hit me back or at least try to defend yourself. You're making me look like the bad guy here.
Maybe she had been pushed. Rinka wasn't alone in the garden, as was usually the case. A young girl was standing in front of her, long with dark hair which was cut into a straight, severe fringe. The girl was wearing a kimono which was rather luxurious. She must have come from a well-to-do family. But it was dirty about the knees. Her hair too was messy. A few loose twigs and leaves twined through through it. There was a cut on her face and a few more cuts on her hands, but the girl didn't seem to care. The cuts were all superficial in any case. None of them were bleeding. She looked as though she had been dragged through a hedge backwards, but maybe that was an inaccurate reading of the situation. Had she crawled through a hedge instead? Masayomi took stock of the scene for a few moments before striding forth as best as he could, wincing as he descended from the veranda and into the garden. He approached Rika, who was shaking and standing before her. He said, "What in the world is going on here?"
Masayomi!
Rika stared up at her surrogate father, her eyes wide. Sniffling, she got to her feet. At least she wasn't so badly injured she couldn't understand. Let me out for a second. Then hid herself behind his back. Her fingers curled against the fabric of Masayomi's kimono, and softly she mumbled,
I was just playing when this girl appeared. She came through the hedge.
"The hedge?" Masayomi raised an eyebrow while Rika nodded. "Well, that's all for a mystery. What happened? Did she do anything to you?"
She said she wanted to play with me, and then
Masayomi tried to cock an answer from Rika, but it was impossible. She had gone mute, as she often did when she was anxious, her clawed fingers curling even more tightly about his kimono. Masayomi could see that getting the full story from Rika would be like trying to sip on blood from a stone. But what about the girl in his garden? Maybe she would be a little more forthcoming. "Now, who do we have here? Who are you? And what are you doing in my garden?" Dark-haired girl harummed, her hands on her hips, and said in a hard voice which didn't suit how very small she was.
My name's Kenan, if you want to know, but why are you talking to me like that? You're making it sound like I did something wrong when I didn't. I swear I didn't. I didn't do nothing.
That should be I didn't do anything if you want to be pedantic. Pedantic. My, somebody sounds defensive. Are you sure you've done nothing wrong?
Yes, I'm sure. I really didn't do nothing. I came in here because everyone told me not to. Miss Suzu said a demon lived here and I should keep my distance.
Tashina. Masayomi sighed. He knew that the villagers whispered about him behind his back, but there was something embarrassing about being told it point blank by a young girl with a dirty kimono and leaves in her hair. Do people talk about me often? Kenan pondered this for a few moments. She placed her hand beneath her chin, her brow furrowed in thought, then said,
Not that much, I guess. Most people pretend you don't exist, but when they do, they get real weird about it. I was asking about your house because it's so nice and big, and it has such a huge garden too, but my sister was like, no, Kenan, you cannot go there. You won't be safe. Well, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me what to do. I wanted to see if a demon really lived here with my own eyes. I was really curious.
Here Kenan stabbed an accusatory finger in Rika's direction.
But she's not nothing like what I imagined. She was just playing in the garden picking flowers. What's so demonic about that?
I think you might be laboring under a few misapprehensions here, miss. Masayomi looked the young girl over. He thought he recognized her. Didn't she live with her parents in the village shrine? Wakabayashi, is it?
That's right.
The girl Wakabayashi Kenan scowled, then said,
I don't believe this. I went through so much effort to come here. I have to get Miss Suzu and Miss Say this slip. And this girl ain't anything like what I thought she'd be. She's not scary at all. I asked her if she'd catch a rabbit for me and like bite its head off or something, but she refused. How boring is that? I didn't want to though. I don't want to hurt anybody. Her at least, give me a break. What kind of demon are you if you can't even manage that much? Some of the boys from the village throw stones at stray cats for fun and they ain't monsters. At least I don't think they are. They're just normal, dirty, nasty little boys. Well, why would they do that though?
do what?
Throw stones at cats. That sounds mean.
I don't know.
I think they do it because they're bored. There ain't much to do around here. That's right, I wanted to see you, but this has been a total letdown. I'm sorry? You shouldn't be. You didn't even do anything when I pushed you over. You just started crying. What's up with that, huh?
about that bruise, I suppose. Masayomi gave the top of Rinka's head a reassuring ruffle, then looked back at Kanan. Now, Miss Kanan, you're probably aware of this already at this point, but I feel like I should make one thing plain. Rinka here might be a demon, but she's no different from an ordinary little girl. She's very kind and she's done nothing to hurt anybody. She doesn't even like to brush spiders. She always asks me to catch them and let them outside when she finds them in the bathtub. She thinks they're scary.
Huh. Well, I get that. I don't like spiders too much either.
They are quite unsettling, aren't they, with all of their long legs?
And all their eyes.
Kanan shuddered.
Mama always has to take care of the spiders when we find them in the bathtub. My dad and my sisters don't like them. I wonder if that means my mother's even stronger than a demon.
Well, I wouldn't know. I hate to make unflattering remarks about your mother, but mothers can be quite vicious, especially when they think that their children are in danger.
My own mother was a simple woman, but she could...
I'm sorry. I thought I was reading a Kanan line. Oh, I cringe. I'm cringing. Let's start it again. My own mother was a simple woman, but she could be rather frightening when she wanted to be. There we go.
My mom's pretty scary too. She's always shouting at everyone. Sometimes I don't think anything scares her. Apart from demons, I guess. She told me not to come here too.
Was she adamant about that?
I don't know what that word means, but she was totally on me Suzu-san when I talked about coming here. She said no good comes from talking to demons, but I don't get it. My mom was making out that Rinka's really scary, but I think she's way scarier. Rinka never shouted at me once, but my mom does it all the time. It doesn't make any sense.
People's prejudices often don't. We tend to fear things we know nothing about, which is why everybody is so wary of Rinka.
If they spent a bit more time with her.
So,
I'm at that part of the stream, guys, where I'm mixing up everybody's voices and dialogue.
Of course. Hey, Ignis, I see you're still here.
If they spent a bit more time with her like you are and they learned how kind she is, then they wouldn't be so rude to her. It's their ignorance which makes them take against her.
Does that mean Rinka here didn't try to kill Mrs. Miyake's cat?
I beg your pardon? Did something happen to Komogi?
Yeah, she went missing last week. Mr. and Mrs. Miyake searched for her up and down the village, and so did a bunch of other people. They couldn't find her. It was like she vanished into thin air. Everybody started saying a fluffy cat like Komogi couldn't have disappeared, though she's too big.
She's rather rude to her, yes. Miyake's cat, Komogi, was well known in the village for being a portly creature. She had a habit of eating leftover cuts of meat that Miyake's gave her, which had inflated her into almost comic proportions. Somebody started saying
that the demon in the Haruno household must have caught her while she was out for a walk and torn her limb from limb like this.
Kanan made a particularly violent series of gestures with her hands, which made Rinka wince. And broken her
neck just like this and drank her blood. That's what everybody was saying.
Oh my. Masayomi frowned, one reassuring hand still resting on Rinka's scalp.
That sounds rather violent.
Oh, that sounds rather violent.
That's where everybody thought happened. Demons are supposed to drink blood after all, and eat hearts and entrails and, I don't know, all sorts.
I thought
Rinka must have done it too. Everybody sounded so sure. But if you can't even kill spiders, I guess you probably couldn't kill a cat.
Kanan peered at Rinka curiously and shook her head vigorously in response.
Well, that figures. I don't think you look like you could have killed or eaten the cat either. You're so scrawny, the cat probably would have scratched you. I think I know that cat though. Did you say she was fluffy? Yeah, real big. She has a huge puffy tail, and she's whiter than snow. Oh, I do know her then!
You do? Masayomi looked at Rinka curiously. He had never seen her with any cat before, stray or otherwise, but he didn't exactly have his hand on Rinka around the clock. It was possible she could have played with Komogi when Masayomi was still abed in the early hours. He had been finding it hard to wake up at a sensible hour recently, owing to his various aches and pains.
Yes, I do. She comes into the garden sometimes to beg for food. She's been doing it for months.
Rika toyed with her sleeves, newly shined.
She stopped by only a couple of days ago, actually. She did?
She did? Sorry.
God, it's so hard to juggle back and forth. I should get used to it though. The more I do visual novels, depending on if you guys even want it. I'm sure you probably would have preferred if I did DDLC instead of a visual novel no one's heard of unless you're a huge ebi-hime fan. You know, I would have loved DBT to be here in the chat, but he left the Discord the other day. I don't know what's happening to him, but I'll be sure to contact him.
Rika nodded while Kenan said, "Does that mean Tomoki's alright then?" She seemed alright to me. I think she just went for a stroll. Next time I see her, maybe I can ask Masayomi to try and catch her. Then we can give her back to the Miyakis. They wouldn't mind. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm sure the Miyakis will be real happy eating. Do you really think so? Sure. I mean, why wouldn't they be? They would be worried about a lot about Komomi. She's spending time in my garden with me.
Rika exhaled. Her expressions uneasy.
And people don't like me. What if they think I kidnapped her? Or what if they think I cursed her? Masayomi's old maid thought I was cursed, so she ran away. She said I was an omen of misfortune.
The Miyakis might not want
Snowy, Komogi back if they find out about this.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. People can be pretty suspicious. Masayomi thought Kenan probably meant superstitious, but he didn't correct her. He knew from his years spent as an educator that she was exactly the sort of surly child who didn't appreciate being educated.
And I should know, my folks both run a shine. Let's see then.
Kenan pondered, one hand beneath her chin, then said,
if you do find her, maybe you can give her to me. I can say I found her. Does that sound alright? Oh yes, I think that should be good. Let's do that then. I'll come back in a few days when I can find the time to see if you manage to catch Komogi. Mrs. and Mrs. Miyaki will be real happy. I wonder if they'll give me a reward for finding her. Maybe they'll give me some spending money.
Hey now. Masayomi frowned, not entirely enchanted by Kenan's mercantile attitude. Getting Komogi back to the Miyakis is one thing, but do you not think it is a touch unfair to take the credit for finding Komogi yourself, to claim a reward for it, no less? That would be dishonest.
I guess.
Kenan frowned. She stepped to the ground with her sandal and said,
Alright, if Mr. and Mrs. Miyaki give me some money, I can take it back here and split it with you, Rika, or maybe I could buy you some sweets. Isn't that kind of me?
Part of Masayomi wanted to question Kenan's so-called goodness. She had only made the offer because he had needled her into it, but Rika didn't seem to care about the specifics. She was staring now, her eyes wide like rubies.
Would you really buy me sweets? Yeah, I could get you some rice cakes maybe, or some dango. It's really cute and colorful, and it comes on little sticks. I like dango a lot. It's very sweet. You should try it too. Oh!
Rika's eyes widened even further, her horizons shining so brightly they might very well have contained within them whole galaxies.
I've never had dango before, and they sound really good. They are. They're super yummy, but I'm surprised. Has the Mr. Haruma ever bought you sweets before? He mostly feeds me rice and fish. He says sweets are bad for my teeth. Ugh. Kenan pulled the face. He sounds just as bad as my mother. She doesn't let me eat sweets either, but Dad sometimes buys me things behind her back. The dango will be real nice. I promise they will. You promise? Yeah, cross my heart. If I lie, I'll swallow 1,000 needles in all. Oh no, I wouldn't want you to do something like that. That sounds painful.
It's alright, Rika. It's just a saying. It's alright, Rika. It's just a saying.
A saying? Yeah, I'm really gonna swallow 1,000 needles, but I really will buy you those dango. Mr. Haruno's been holding out on you.
Well, I'm very sorry for caring about my daughter's teeth. Somebody frowned in a rather perturbed. What right did a whippersnapper like Kenan have to lecture him about how to raise his own child? There was a reason why Masayomi did not like to feed Rika sweets. They were lacking in nutrition for one thing, and they were extortionately expensive for another. And there was a whole slew of practical concerns about Rinka's teeth. If Rinka did get a toothache, it would be difficult for Masayomi to get any dentist to take a look inside her mouth. Rinka's fangs were far sharper than an ordinary person's, and they would have scared most dentists away. Masayomi was trying to prevent a potential disaster while he had the chance. Kenan, however, seemed not to care about the future. She was too young to consider all of the possibilities, and much too careless. Instead, she laughed.
You're pretty funny, mister.
I am.
Yeah, of course you are. You gotta be to look after a demon.
Well, Masayomi's expression relaxed upon hearing this clarification, and he smiled. You might have a point there.
I know I do. You and Rika are both really funny, but I don't think you're bad. You seem real nice, actually. You're much, much nicer than my mother.
Well, I do try.
You think I'm nice? Yeah, I think you're really, really nice. It's kind of sad that you aren't the scary demon I thought you'd be, but being a nice demon is kind of cool too. It is? Yeah, I've heard some stories about demons before, and they're all really nasty. They live up in the mountains, but they come down every once in a while to kidnap children, eat pets, and cause all sorts of problems. That's what everybody always says. But I think it's much, much more interesting to find a demon who's friendly. You're not at all like the demons I've heard about. In fact,
Kenan grinned widely enough that Masayomi could see she was missing one of her back teeth. He supposed it must have fallen out recently to make way for her adult teeth.
since you are so nice, why don't we be friends? Do you really want to be my friend? Of course I do, silly, or I wouldn't have offered. I'll have to come back later anyway to see if you managed to find Komoki, and I'll have to hand her in and get my...
Kenan caught Masayomi's disapproving eye, then changed tack.
I mean, our Lord, I've gotta buy those dangle for you, so I'll be back here a few times. We might as well be friends, right? I think it'll make things much easier. That's really alright. It's more than alright. I think it'll be fun having a demon for a friend. I don't know anybody else who can say that. Though now that I think about it, I don't think my mom or dad would be very happy if they knew I was playing with you. And I don't think Ayako or Misuzu or Mise would like it either. They might be a bit funny about it. I don't want to get into trouble, so I guess this will have to be our little secret. A secret? Rika's enthusiasm did not spit at this. If anything, she seemed even more excited than before. So much so, she was practically vibrating. Other children might have taken umbrage at being kept a secret, as though there was something shameful, but Rika must have been accustomed to it. She had already spent the last year hitting away inside Masayomi's home, away from the prying eyes of the villagers. To her, this must have been more of the same, with a slight twist of course. This time, Rika wasn't keeping herself a secret for the sake of the villagers. She was keeping her friendship with Kenan a secret instead, and secrets shared between two people were always much more exciting than those kept one to herself. That sounds like fun! I never had any friends to keep secrets with. Unless Snowy counts, though I guess he's actually called Komoki. Anyway, I think that would be nice, if you don't mind, Masayomi. Rika's enthusiasm was great enough that for a few moments she had forgotten Masayomi. She remembered him soon enough, however, glancing up at him guiltily. Would it be alright if Kenan misses me?
Well, Masayomi frowned. He was unsure whether he really approved of Kenan. For such a young girl, she was awfully willful, and she was quite rude too. Her manner of speaking was even coarser than a lot of the boys in the village, and quite the curious contrast when one saw how extravagant her kimono was, how nearly cut her hair. It was even stranger when Masayomi considered that she lived in the local shrine. Masayomi knew that Kenan was being trained by her exacting mother in the ways of being a shrine maiden, and shrine maidens were supposed to be demure, elegant, and reserved. They certainly were not supposed to crawl through hedges, go hunting for demons, or insult their elders. Kenan's behavior was completely inappropriate for a future shrine maiden, but perhaps that was why she acted so much. She must have led a close to your life. Masayomi knew Mrs. Wakabayashi in passing, and he knew she was a stern woman, a real stickler for the rules. She didn't let her daughters go to school. She didn't want them mixing with the village children, and instead educated them at home. Hina must have, in her mature, childish way, have been rebelling against her overbearing mother. Masayomi could not fault her for that, and neither did he want to send her away. She was the first girl Rika's age who had shown an interest in her. Masayomi didn't want Rika to pick up bad habits, but perhaps she was a little too good for such a young girl. Every child deserved to get up to a bit of naughtiness every once in a while. It built character. It would at least give Rika something to do other than reading. Alright then. You can come over if you want. I don't mind.
Alright, I knew you'd see it my way. For such an old geezer, you ain't all that bad.
Now let's not get carried away. This old geezer still has a few rules. I'll let you come and see Rika on one condition.
Well, what's that, huh?
You have to promise not to hurt her. Do you think you can do that? I don't mind if you want to play, but don't push her over again. If you do, I'll be very, very cross. And I don't think you like me when I'm cross. Rika might be a demon, but I was a teacher. And teachers are much, much scarier than demons. Going back to Rika's perspective again. Rika was so excited after meeting Kanon, she found it difficult to relax that night. She hadn't anticipated that she might meet another girl her age, cloistered as she was in Masayomi's homeworld, that this girl might want to be her friend. The thought was a novel one, but that made it no less heady. Rika was in such high spirits she almost felt giddy. She was too excitable to settle down properly to play Go with Masumi after dinner, despite his gentle cajoling. Come on, Rika, I thought you wanted to get better at Go. Aren't you always telling me that you're going to best me someday?
Someday, maybe. But not tonight.
Oh. Masumi raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you're giving up already. We barely started playing.
We've been playing for more than half an hour!
Yes, I'm refreshing the music though can last for a whole day. We're still in the opening stages.
What?
Rika stared at Matsumi in horror. She could feel the color draining from her cheeks, turning her skin snowy. White. A little like snow. Or Komogi, Rika supposed she to say.
You don't want me to play Go with you for a whole day, do you?
Rika didn't mind playing the games with Matsumi. It was a means of passing the time and it was more involved than listening to the radio or watching television. But Go had never been one of her favorites. When board games were concerned, she preferred shogi. Masumi Go board was too fast, but while the rules might have appeared simple, they were deceptively so. Rika still found it difficult to wrap her head around even the most basic strategies. If Masumi wanted, he could have caught her in a ladder every match from which she could not escape, effectively claiming control for more than half the board. The gold board was too large for Rika to wrap her head around, but the pieces were much too small. She struggled to take them between her fingers, and she often dropped them.
Hi, Cat. Hope you're doing alright. Hope you're doing okay, Catherine. You missed a cute scene with the cat. There was a cute scene with the cat. She struggled to take them between her fingers, and she often dropped them. They were smooth and shiny, even though Masayomi had possessed this board for many years. Apparently, it had belonged to one of his older brothers, and Rika struggled with them even more than she had her chopsticks. Sometimes Rika wondered whether the game of Go had been devised solely to torment her. It was a tedious offer, something Masayomi could tell, because he smiled. Well, maybe not. I can tell your heart isn't really into it anyway. Are you still thinking about Miss Wakabayashi? You mean Kanon?
Masayomi nodded, and Rika smiled, relieved that she had something to talk about other than Go strategies, which hurt her skull.
Of course I'm thinking about her. She's my friend. Or she says she wanted to be.
Rika toyed with the sleeves of her kimono, really anxious as she smiled.
You think Kanon meant it?
Meant what?
That she wanted to be my friend. Nobody else has ever said that to me yet. Well, I
don't think that makes you any less likable, though.
The villagers all hate me.
The villagers didn't give you a proper chance. Not like Wiz Wakabayashi has.
She might be rash.
She might be rash, but she has more sense than everybody else, and he got Shikawa put together.
Then you really think she wants to be my friend?
I'm sure, my dear. Why wouldn't she? You're a lovely young girl. Masayomi jumped as he set down a glowstone, claiming a large swath of Rika's white pieces, which she had been trying fruitlessly to protect. Even if your skills in gold leave much to be desired. Rinka abandoned the game of Go shortly after that. She knew there was no point in proceeding, not when Masayomi had been able to claim so much of the board. She would never be able to defeat him. Her victory was very far away indeed, even further than the stars were shown in the night sky. Rinka hoped that her next encounter with Kenan would not be so very distant, however. She went to bed with this hope, though she found it hard to sleep. She was so excited she kept tossing and turning upon her futon to such an extent she kept jostling Masayomi. Masayomi's bedroom was rather large. All of the rooms in his home were large, given it had housed once 3 boys. But Rinka liked to sleep close beside him, knowing that Masayomi was only a few centimeters away from him, even as she slept was soothing. It was hard for Rinka to relax on her own. Though she had been living with Masayomi for a year, she still found the shadows that unspooled across the tatami mats at night unnerving. They reminded her of too much of being back in the mountains. Not that she could recall much of that, she didn't want to. Rinka's time in the mountains had been miserable. It was less so with Masayomi. He kept her safe, though Rinka fancied he was starting to get a bit perturbed the third time she jostled him, and he awoke. Masayomi sat up on his futon, rubbing his eyes wearily, then looked at Rinka askance. Are you alright, Rinka?
Yes,
Rinka blushed, though was lost in darkness.
I'm fine.
Are you sure? You don't need to go to the bathroom, do you?
No, it's fine. I was just having trouble sleeping, that's all.
Well, I could see that. Masayomi chuckled. He looked a touch more rumpled than usual. He didn't seem upset or annoyed. He was still smiling. Maybe Rinka had misjudged him. Masayomi wasn't the sort of person who lost his patience after being awoken a couple of times. He was too placid and mild-mannered, traits he must have picked up while teaching. It was impossible to get a class full of rowdy children in the game, and so Masayomi had once told Rinka if one lost one's temper, it was best to be calm and untroubled like the surface of a lake. Should I take it then that your loss of your game of Go infuriated you to such a degree that sleep is no longer viable?
Oh no.
Rinka's brow creased.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I already forgot.
How tragic! Masayomi laughed. And here I was, hoping I'd be able to kindle a passion for the game, without wishful thinking.
Playing Go is a bit tiring. It's hard to hold the stones, and I don't like kneeling for so long. I like going on walks more.
I know you do. I wish I could take you outside more myself. There's nothing wrong with exercising, and I think it would do you some good to get out of the house. But there are some issues with that, sadly. Rinka was well aware of this. She knew the risks. She still had nightmares about her disastrous trip to Higashikawa, and she didn't want much to venture outside the walls of Masayomi's home. She was much safer than Masayomi. She doubted anybody would be as kind to her as he was, not even Kenan. Well, I might not be able to take you on walks outside, but I can show you the world in another way.
You can?
That's right, I can always tell you a story. Goodness knows I read enough books. Though I thought you'd like me to relay one of my favorite murder mysteries to you.
No, thank you. I don't want to hear about murder.
I didn't think you would. You've always been so sensitive. How about a tale about a young boy then, or young girl if you rather, who goes on a fantastic adventure to the Dragon Palace at the bottom of the ocean?
Is there a dragon palace at the bottom of the ocean?
There is in this story. My mother told it to me several times when I was a child. It's a story about a handsome young fisherman called Hiroshima Taru. Though there's no reason why she can't be a pretty young fisherwoman called Mishima Hanako. Now, do you want to hear our fisherwoman's adventures?
Oh yes, that sounds like fun.
Very well. Now let me see. Our story begins in a small village, much like Higashikawa. Though unlike Higashikawa, this village is located near the ocean. Urashima Hanako was a plucky young girl, and Masayomi began to spin a story for Rinka, one which was founded in folk tales of old, but which Rinka enjoyed regardless. She hung on to Masayomi's every word, enchanted by the cadences of his voice. As with a soft sigh, Rinka's fair lashes fell shut and she drifted off to sleep. Though it had taken Rinka a while to fall asleep the night prior, she woke up early come the following morning. Masayomi was still fast asleep when Rinka rose. Lying so still, he might well have been a wax figure. Rinka looked at him for a few moments, frowning as the sun's light illuminated his gray hair, his swallow skin. Rinka could have seen his mustache wavering as it sometimes did when he slept, and neither could she see his chest rising and falling. Was he alright?
Masayomi!
Rinka called Masayomi's name quietly, suddenly seized with worry. Rinka knew that Masayomi's condition was frail. He had fallen ill last winter, once all the leaves had fallen from the trees, and Rinka had fretted, though Masayomi had reassured her. He had told her between his coughing that he was quite alright, that he had dealt with much worse in the past, and there was no cause for the concern. Rinka had worried about Masayomi regardless, of course. She had been able to help herself, but he had been as good as his word. Masayomi's coughing had abated only after a few days. He had soon been back on his feet again, looking a little more wan and a little more weary than he had before. Perhaps otherwise he had been in fine spirits. Rinka had been relieved when Masayomi had recovered, but she was starting to get anxious now. He had lain on his futon for many hours as his sickness had gripped him, looking like a corpse. Rinka didn't want to see Masayomi like that again. She leant in, fearful that there was something seriously wrong, terrified that he might in the night have stopped breathing. But then Masayomi snored into sleep and sighed, and Rinka's heart flooded with relief. He was alright after all.
Jeez.
Rinka bowed and then gave Masayomi a gentle prod on the cheek with her fingertip, gentle enough that he didn't stir.
Don't scare me like that. If I don't have you, I don't know what I'd do.
Rinka rose, relieved and dressed, changing out of her old night clothes and into the lovely patterned kimono Masayomi had bought her. She fixed her hair, brushing her fingers through it, then batted out of the bedroom and into the hallway. It was still early, the sun had only just risen, but Rinka's stomach was rumbling. She liberated some food from the fridge. Masayomi had made rice balls again and ventured out into the veranda. Though Rinka had come to feel quite welcome in Masayomi's home, the garden was still her favorite place to sit and think. It looked especially pretty in the springtime, the grass a lush and lovely green, while little flowers poked up everywhere. Rinka picked at her rice ball as she looked across the garden, popping bits of vinegared rice into her mouth. She chewed slowly, pensively, as the warm air stirred her hair, her sleeves. All was calm, the only disturbance that of the birds as they chirped amongst the trees, at least until the hedge rustled. Rinka stared at it, her rice ball forgotten, as a familiar head poked out of amongst the leaves, then a familiar body.
Snowy!
Rinka cried out to her unexpected visitor, though she soon realized the error of her ways. She now knew, after talking to Kanan yesterday, that Snowy wasn't called Snowy after all. She was actually called Komogi. Rinka couldn't bring herself to call Snowy that, however. For the last 6 months, Snowy had been Rinka's friend, her sweet, kind animal companion. Rinka had grown used to calling Komogi Snowy, and she didn't much feel like changing because the Miyakis had decided to bequeath the cat with another name. Snowy might have been Komogi to everybody else, but she was still Snowy to Rinka. Nothing would change that, not even when Snowy was returned to the Miyakis. You've been quite the naughty girl, you know. Rinka scolded Snowy, a bit gently, as Snowy padded towards her, purring.
What do you think you're doing? Run away from home like that. The Miyagis are very worried about you.
Snowy mulled in response, rubbing her head against grasp the significance of Rika's words, or if she did, she simply didn't care. Snowy had always been such a fiercely individualistic cat. In that sense, she was a little like a nun. Rika giggled as Snowy tried to paw the rice ball in her lap, though she soon stopped herself. She wasn't supposed to be giggling. She needed to give Snowy a lecture. Rika batted Snowy's paws away. Snowy mewed, then said, "I don't know if I should reward you. You've been a very naughty girl. Why did you run away? It can't be because the Miyakis have been treating you badly. Mrs. Miyaki wasn't very nice to me, but I'm sure she'd be nice to you. You're her precious cat." "Yes, that's right. You're very, very precious. That's why the Miyakis take such good care of you. They probably feed you a lot, so you're so round." "I don't know why you started coming into our garden at all. You don't need any more food. Fine." Rika relented, seeing how insistently Snowy was rubbing her head against her side. She smiled, then said, "I guess I can feed you just a little bit. You'll be staying here for a while, at least until Kenan comes to collect you. Then she'll take you right back to the Miyakis. You'll be able to go home. Isn't that nice?" Snowy mouthed in response, though Rika was unsure whether she was happy about the prospect of going home, or whether she was excited about the tuna mayonnaise rice ball Rika was holding out to her. Rika couldn't tell. She was starting to feel rather pensive, however, even as Snowy's pink, pointed tongue nudged her fingertips. Snowy might have had a home, but what about her? Rika had never really fit in among her fellow demons, but she no longer had to worry about them. She was with Masayomi now. It didn't matter if everybody in Higashikawa turned against her, even Kenan. No, though Rika hoped she wouldn't. She had been able to find a home of her own too. She had somewhere she belonged. And when she thought about that, she decided that she was rather fortunate indeed. Going back to Masayomi's perspective now. Sorry about that, guys. The days and the weeks passed by, but Kenan only stopped by the Haruna household once. She returned only to check whether Rika and Masayomi had been successful in apprehending the runaway Komogi. Rika had been pleased to tell Kenan that yes, Komogi had come sniffing around their garden a couple days prior, and yes, she and Masayomi had been taking very good care of her. Rika went to fetch Komogi from the living room where she had been dozing and handed her to Kenan. Komogi was quite a hefty cat, and Kenan's shoulders had slumped under her weight. Masayomi had worried that Kenan wouldn't be able to carry her all the way back to the village and had offered to help, but Kenan had refused it. "I'll be just fine. If I need help, I'd ask for it. I'm a lot tougher than I look. And anyway, Komogi's just a dumb cat. I can carry her easily." Oh, don't say that. Masayomi hadn't been too convinced on this point. Komogi was remarkably placid and well-behaved for a cat. She understood when Kenan grabbed at her, and neither had she tried to scratch or captor, but she was very happy. Kenan, meanwhile, was very slight. The logistics did not seem to add up, but Kenan refused any aid. Kenan was so insistent on the matter, Masayomi had never seen a little girl pop so much. Masayomi soon gave up. "Oh, alright then," he said. "You're feeling quite exhausted. If you think you can carry Komogi by yourself, then by all means be my guest. It'll save me a walk into the village, if nothing else." Masayomi was quite glad when Kenan slopped off. The Rika wasn't as truculent as her newfound friend. Masayomi would have loved Rika regardless, even if her temperament had been as sour as his favorite pickled plums, but it was a lot easier to get along with a polite child than a pouty, peevish one. That had been a fortnight ago, however, and Kenan had to put in another appearance. Part of Masayomi was grateful for this. He found Kenan's company exhausted, but he knew Rika was beginning to fret. Every morning after eating her breakfast, she would sit on the veranda, staring out at the garden to see if Kenan would show up. She was always disappointed, however. She She was so distracted she couldn't focus on her lessons. Rika had always been rather studious, but she paid less and less attention to her books as the time wore on, and spent more time asking Masaomi if he thought Kenan would come back soon. Kenan was on Rika's mind that Saturday morning too, as both she and Masaomi sat upon the veranda. It was a warm, sunny day, though it was still relatively early in the year. It was late March, and the trees in the garden were festooned with cherry blossoms, blossoms which would soon scatter to make way for the green leaves of the birch in summertime. It was so warm, Masaomi had brought a pitcher of cool barley tea onto the veranda, which he served for both himself and Rika. Masaomi had drunk 2 glasses of the stuff already, but Rika had only had the one, and she only had finished it. She kept taking anxious sips of her drink, her red eyes still trained upon the hedgerows at the back of her garden. Her slender legs swung back and forth as softly she said,
You don't think Kenan hasn't forgotten about me, do you?
I wonder. Masaomi frowned. He would have liked to reassure Rinka, but once again he didn't want to risk lying to her. Masaomi didn't have very much faith in Kenan. He thought that she was flighty, a fact that she already proved. Now that she had retrieved Komoki and she had presumably handed her back to the morning Miyaki, she was unsure whether Kenan would return to split that reward with Rinka. She might have made a promise, but just how valuable was the promise of a young girl with an attitude problem? Masaomi learned back on the veranda, his own legs swishing as he took in the garden, around the springtime colors. The grass was green, and small flowers were beginning to sprout amongst it, white, blue, and yellow. The crimson spider lilies had already bloomed, and were swaying to and fro in the breeze like blood-red pendulums. It was warm enough that insects were humming around, albeit like a daisy. The fat bees were flitting between the flowers drunkenly, in a way that suggested they weren't really trying. It was a nice enough day despite the baleful expression on Rinka's face, and Masaomi wanted to enjoy it. For once, his leg wasn't hurting him. All was well in the world, at least it would be, if he could cheer Rinka up. Well, even if Kenan doesn't show up, we can always do something fun together.
Something fun?
Masaomi nodded. The activities he and Rinka could do together were limited, given they couldn't go to the village, but they did not necessarily need to be confined to the garden. It's such a nice week day. We could maybe go for a walk in the woods. I can't wander too far, but that's no reason why you can't enjoy yourself if you keep within eyesight, that is. Would you like that? Masaomi didn't think that Rinka was unhappy living with him. In fact, it was quite the opposite. She was in effect a prisoner, trapped in the 4 walls of his home. She always perked up when Masaomi talked about going for walks, at least she usually did. It wasn't so that morning, however. Rika's thoughts must still have been on the erstwhile Kenan because she sighed and said,
What if Kenan comes back when we're not here? She'll think we're avoiding her. She'll be really sad.
I think you should think less about Kenan and more about yourself. Isn't that making you sad?
It's fine. I'm not that sad. I'll be sadder if Kenan shows up and we're not here.
But if Kenan shows up and we aren't here, you wouldn't even know about it.
Yes! That would make it even worse!
It would. Rina nodded determinedly.
I can't leave. Not if she might stop by. If she doesn't show up, I'll know about it. But if I go out, I never will. I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about it.
I think you might be thinking about Kenan too much already. Last time we found them, we retrieved this cup of barley tea. But oh well, we don't need to go for a walk if we don't want to. There are plenty of fun things we can do here, like... Do you want me to tell you a story?
I don't know if I'm in the mood.
Then maybe we can play a game of gold.
No, thank you.
Rika replied firmly, her lips set into a little line.
I'm no good at it. You always beat me.
That does tend to be how our magic goes, doesn't it? Masaomi smiled faintly. He had been defeating Rinka maliciously, of course. He had introduced Rinka to the game of Go a few months ago, and he always made sure to give himself a 6-stone handicap. He didn't want to crush Rinka's feelings towards the game before they had a chance to blossom, but Masaomi made a conscious effort to go easy on her. However, she would frown and say, "You are playing properly." Rika seemed determined to try and beat Matsumi on even footing, though that was ridiculous. Matsumi had been playing Go on and off for almost 50 years. Rika couldn't possibly hope to stack up to his accumulated expertise even with a handicap, though she tried valiantly. Rika was nothing but a hard worker, even when it came to activities which were supposed to be fun. You shouldn't fret too much though, you'll get better the more you practice.
Do you really think so?
Of course, that's how these things always go. Nobody's good at anything during their first few attempts. But if you really don't feel like go, we could try shogi instead. I'm not as accomplished in that. Morika always used to beat me anyway.
You're still better than me, Val.
Well, yes, that's because you're a child.
Sometimes I wish I wasn't.
Don't wish your life away, you silly thing. You'll get older whenever you want to or not. Everybody does, we can't help it. For now, you should enjoy your youth. Matsumi thought that there was very much to Rika's youth, but she spent all of her time with Matsumi, so had to adopt the habits of an old man. She ate the same simple, easy-to-digest foods Matsumi liked, white rice, natto, and silken tofu. And she played the same games Matsumi liked, mostly going shogi. She rarely left the house, and when she did, it was only to wander the woods where she and Matsumi picked her mushrooms and wild onions. It was a peaceful, easy-going sort of existence, but it wasn't very exciting. It wasn't the sort of life most children would have enjoyed. Rika never complained, but Matsumi did worry she would grow tired of living such a sheltered life if she hadn't already. Was that why she wanted to see Kanan so much? Kanan might have been a stranger, but she was also a break in the monotony of Rika's everyday routine. Matsumi pondered this and sipping at this barley tea, which was now a little lukewarm when
Ow!
Rika's eyes widened, and it did not take long for Matsumi to discern why. The hedgerow at the back of the garden was rustling. Then from amidst its prison of green leaves and wooden branches, a young girl clad in a kimono appeared, a girl who seemed to have no clumps crawling on the dirt on her belly despite her fine clothes. She rose to her feet after infiltrating the garden and began to brush stray leaves from her kimono, her hair. She was unable to get all the leaves, and a few remained entwined in her short tail. Her kimono, meanwhile, was dusted about the knees with dirt, but that seemed not to bother her. Very little bother about Kabayashi Kanan. Rika hopped from the veranda where she had been burnt and dashed across the garden to greet her friend. Her long fair hair fluttered behind her like a shot as she dashed, and her wooden sandals clattered around the grass. Matsumi had been living with Rika for over a year, and he had never seen her look quite so animated before, nor quite so enthusiastic. It was heartwarming seeing her in such high spirits, though Matsumi did feel obliged to caution. "Be careful, Rika, don't run too quickly. You'll trip." Then to Kanan, Matsumi said somewhat tiredly, "You don't need to crawl through the hedge every time you want to pay us a visit, you know. We have a perfectly good door. You just need to knock."
I know that, but if I go to your front door, it'll be obvious I'm coming to see you. People will talk. I thought you wanted me to keep this a secret.
I don't think you crawling through my hedge is any less conspicuous than you knocking on my door, though. In fact, it might be even more alarming if anybody was to see half of you sticking out the other edge of the hedge wall walking by.
Don't be silly.
Kanan waved one hand airily, as if she was a queen dismissing a particularly foolish member of her court.
I looked around before I started crying to see if anybody else was feeling duh.
The coast was clear when I came here. Then why couldn't you have gone to the front door?
Because that's not as much fun.
Yes, I thought you might say that. Matsumi sighed more than a little perturbed. He could already feel a headache come on. As Kanan stepped over to the veranda, Rika on her heels. The adventurous young girl took a seat there, simply grin.
Can you guess why I came here? I guess I can guess. I can again. Did you come to keep your promise? Did you get the dangle like you said you would?
That's right.
real happy. They gave me some money as a reward, which I knew they would, but I couldn't go spending it at once. I wanted to dash back here as soon as possible so I could keep my promise to you, but I knew my parents wouldn't want to be back at the shrine. I was really busy the last few days because there was a wedding we had to prepare for. But I found the time to sneak out today. I went to buy some mango for the village, and I came running here as soon as I could. Good luck! Kinan reached into her obi, then retrieved the paper bag. The bag was rather crumpled, but the dango Kinan drew from it looked undamaged. A couple of the mochi balls were a little misshapen, but it looked edible. Oh, I've never seen anything like that before! It looks really good! Don't it just? The dango Mrs. Mochizuki makes are the best. I hadn't had any of them for a while myself. I did think about eating both dango myself, and not leaving any for you. Rika's face fell. But a promise is a promise, and I don't go back on my word. I'm a woman of iniquity. Do you mean integrity? Whatever. Now let you try it, Rika. But first, you need to thank me for going out of my way for you. Tell me I'm amazing. I think I deserve it. Hey, I assume you frowned. You thought the Kanan was going a bit too far. But then again, wasn't the Kanan all over it, but really didn't seem to mind. Smile sweetly and said, I think you're really amazing, Kanan. You're so kind. Thank you so much. I love you. Kanan blushed and glanced away. She mumbled, oh, sure. Of course you think I'm amazing. I really am the best. My mother doesn't always realize that. Neither do my stupid sisters. But at least you do. For you're pretty smart for a dude. Maxiomi has been teaching me a lot. He's been showing me how to read and write. We've been playing a lot of Go together. He's much better than I am. But I'm going to beat him eventually. I'm sure you will. You got this. Anyway, reference cannot thrust one of the dango at Rika. Here, this is for you. Oh, thank you. Rika accepted the dango from Kanan, then examined it. Somewhat hesitantly, she blew at it. This she expected to be hot, but Kanan scoffed. You don't have to do that, dummy. It's made of mochi, and it's already cold. You can just bite into it like this. Kanan parted her lips, then sunk her teeth into the topmost dango on the wooden stick, which was cherry blossom pink. Rika stared at Kanan, her brow furrowed as if she were a student studying for a test. She watched as Kanan's jaw worked up and down around the dango before she nodded. Then she turned back to her own dango. Gripping the stick of pastel-colored mochi in her right hand, she dipped her head. Daintily, she brushed her long, fair hair behind one ear to stop it getting in the way, and parted her own lips. She bit down. Rika's sharp teeth sank into the topmost mochi on the stick, and she pulled part of it away. Maxiomi watched as she chewed, smiling gently. A moment passed, a moment during which the gentle breeze stirred Rika's hair in her sleeves. She swallowed. Then she beamed. Is it good? Yes, it's really good. It's super yummy. You should try some too, Maxiomi. Take a bite. Rika offered her stick of dango to Maxiomi while Kanan frowned. Hey, I bought that for you, not Mr. Haruna. I don't want some old man eating my food. But you gave the dango to me. Rather than shrinking away from Kanan, Rika then stood around. She pouted, still holding the stick of dango up to Maxiomi and said, it's mine now, so I can do what I want with it. If I want to share it with Maxiomi, I can. He deserves it. I think it's a waste, especially when old men like him are always eating. Ugh. Pickled plums and dried squid. He wouldn't know what good food tastes like if it hit him over the head. Maxiomi does eat a lot of pickled plums. I don't really like them. Me neither, they're nasty. But I think anybody would like this dango. It's yummy. Do you want some? Rika looked at Maxiomi and implored him, still waving the dango before him. Maxiomi had been tempted to turn the offer down, as kind as it was. He preferred sour foods over sweet ones, despite Kanan and Rika's distaste for his favorite pickled plums. But he couldn't, not when Rika looked so earnest. But Rika must have wanted to share the dango with him because she thought it was delicious. She wanted something they could bond over other than go
Shoki. It was sweet, really. Quite literally. I'd be more than happy to try some. Thank you, Rinka. You're very thoughtful. Masumi smiled, touched by Rinka's kindness. Like Kanan and Rinka earlier, he then lent in. He bit down in the pale pink, Mochi at the top of the stick, taking the last piece of it into his mouth. He chewed, and as he did, Rinka watched it anxiously. How is it?
Do you like it?
He told the mochi was a little too sweet for Masumi's taste and the texture was a bit too squishy. Though Masumi liked it tests, he typically preferred food which was easier to eat. The mochi was giving his jaw a workout which wasn't necessarily welcome. But there was something more, Shimano. He could see why mochi was such a popular snack with young children. If he had been younger himself, he might have liked it a bit more. The fact it was a gift from Rinka imbued it with more significance than it otherwise would have possessed, however. Masumi swallowed. He smiled. Then he said, "Thank you, Rinka. It really was very sweet." From that day forth, Rina and Kanan became firm friends. Kanan couldn't always visit Rinka because she was busy with her lessons and with her work at the shrine, but she stopped by when she could, typically once a week or once every other week. Rinka was as demurred and well-behaved as always when Kanan wasn't there, but on the days when Kanan did put on an appearance by sneaking through the edge, as was becoming a custom, her eyes lit up. Masumi didn't necessarily approve of Kanan, but the obvious joy she brought Rinka was worth putting up with the young Miss Wakabayashi's truculent attitude. Truculent? Masumi hadn't been very pleased when Kanan trailed muddy footprints into the house after a lengthy session of making mud pies in the garden with Rinka, and he was perturbed when she got out his go board without asking and managed to lose several pieces and dealt the and dent the board into the bargain, but he was willing to overlook that. Kanan's company made Rinka happy, and that was all that mattered. The weeks continued to pass by, and then the months. Eventually, the summer began in earnest. The days were long and the nights short. The sun high in the sky for so many hours at a time that sitting in the garden on some days was almost bearable. Masumi typically preferred the warmer weather because it was easier on his joints, but he didn't like it when it was so very warm he had to bathe twice to stop getting so sweaty. Rinka was also beginning to fly from the heat. She seemed to wilt under the intense sunlight like a fire. I'm sorry, guys. I'm the sunshine here. I can't help myself. Rinka was also beginning to fly from the heat. She seemed to wilt under the intense sunlight like a flower, and the mosquitoes, which were now out in full force, all seemingly indiably attracted to her for some reason. Rinka spent her summer flying on the futon like an insect, sipping glasses of barley tea to cool down. The nights were a little less oppressive than the days, but only slightly. They too were uncomfortably hot, so much so Rinka wore numerous times during the night. Rinka sweated in her futon and spent a lot of time tossing and turning. Whenever she woke in the morning, her covers would be crumbled and often tossed to one side. The humming of the cicadas were loud enough to be oppressive, which further hampered Rinka's sleep, and it didn't help that she drank so much barley tea during the day to cool down. All of this tea sloshed about inside her, and it compelled her to get up 2 or 3 more times a night to go to the bathroom. Whenever Rinka had to relieve herself, she would always shake Masumi awake so he could accompany her during this nighttime odyssey. Rinka didn't like wandering through the house at night when the hallways were full of shadows. They unnerved her. Masumi didn't mind this too much, but it made him slow and sluggish when he awoke the following morning. A general malaise had begun to settle upon the Haruna household, one which was broken by the unexpected arrival of Kanan. She arrived much later than usual when the sun had already set, clutching a paper bag to her chest. Masumi wondered what was inside the bag, but he was more worried about why Kanan was out and about so very late. Had something happened? Masumi tried to inquire about this, but Kanan's response was testy. What to tell you? Why'd you want to know? I want to know because I'm an adult. I can't in good conscience let you run around so late at night, not when your parents have no idea where you are. They'll worry about you, and I'm sure your sisters will too. Kanan started. She didn't look convinced. I doubt that. raised an eyebrow in inquiry. And why is that, might I ask?
They won't miss me at all. They never do. They'll be glad to get rid of me, especially Mise. She was being such a cow. Did your sister do something to upset you, Kanan? She does a lot of things to upset me, but she was being especially horrible today. I didn't even do anything wrong. I just wanted to try on some of her clothes. Is there something special about them? I'll say, Mise has really amazing clothes, just like the girls in Reverse Rainbow. Like Reverse Rainbow?
Rika gasped, her eyes widening further still. Masayomi knew little about Korean music, and he knew less still about the music that young girls like. He had no idea who Reverse Rainbow were, but Rinka seemed to. Kanan must have told her about this group before. Rinka looked very keen, more keen. Masayomi thought, feeling rather disappointed that she was about Go or Shogi.
Does your sister have pleated skirts and those dresses with all the patterns? Oh yeah, and then some. She has high heels too, and they're really, really high. Does she really? Yes, she does. Mom hates them, but Misa buys them with her own money. She has a part-time job, so she really can't say anything about it. Mom would never let me wear anything like that though. She thinks Western clothes are evil or something. I don't know. I don't really get it. It's so annoying though. Mise always shows off to me whenever she buys anything new, all cause she knows I'm stuck wearing these stuffy old kimonos, but her new heels really are cute. I wanted to try them on so badly, so I slipped into her room when she was on the phone, but I wasn't quick enough. Mise caught me and she was so angry. I think she was angry anyway because she had a fight with her boyfriend. I can always tell. He lives in Kawano and he calls her almost every night and it always makes her moody. But she got even angry when she saw me. She shouted, but it wasn't fair. I didn't mean to break one of the heels on her stupid shoes.
Ah, so that was why Mise had turned on Kanan, was it? Masayomi had wondered. Masayomi didn't know Wakabayashi Mise, Kanan's fashionable older sister, very well, but he felt a certain kinship with her regardless. He could relate to her frustrations well. After Kanan had dented his go board, Kanan seemed rather good at breaking things. It was one of her special talents. Forget being a shrine maiden, perhaps Mrs. Wakabayashi should have been training her youngest daughter to go into construction instead. Or deconstruction. She would make quite a good wrecking ball, actually. Anyway, Mise yelled at me, and I yelled at her. And then Mom came in to see what the matter was. And would you believe it? She took Mise's stick inside! She got mad at me too, and then she sent me to my room without any dinner. She was going to ground me, but I don't want to be grounded, so there! I managed to sneak out, and I ran all the way down the steps from the shrine in the dark to come here. I'm not going to sit with my sisters anymore, not when they're so mean and hateful to me! Wow, you're so brave, Kanan! Rika applauded Kanan's supposed courage, but Masayomi was less convinced. And what would you do if your parents noticed that you've gone missing? Or one of your sisters, for that matter. They'll be worried about you. Let them worry. I don't care. You might not, but I do. If they find out you've come here. They won't. I haven't told anybody that I've been coming here. They'll never guess. You have to be crazy to hang out with a demon. And because it's so crazy, it sounds like exactly the sort of thing you would do. Masayomi sighed. He knew, as a responsible adult, the best course of action would be to escort Kanan straight back home before her family could worry if they weren't worrying already. If he did that, however, he would then have to explain to Mrs. Wakabayashi that Kanan had been visiting him in Rinka. He doubted that Mrs. Wakabayashi would like that. If she knew what her youngest daughter had been doing, she would never let Kanan sneak out of the house again. Then, Rinka would no longer have a friend to play with. Masayomi did move, unsure of what to do, or Kanan said briefly. Anyway, enough boring talk. I figured since I was coming out here so late, I might as well sell you something cool, Rinka. Something cool? Rinka looked at Kanan eagerly. Did you bring me Mise's heels so I can try them on too? What? No, they're busted anyway. They ain't no good. But this should be real neat. I bought these a while back, thinking I'd like to share them with you, but I never had a chance to use them. I do now though. Since it's nice as dark. Look. Kanan thrusted her crumpled bag forwards and beamed. A bright smile would seem to shine in the dark. I brought you a whole bunch of sparkles to play with, Rinka. was hoping her announcement would be met with excited glee. However, she was sadly mistaken. Rika tipped her head to one side, her expression politely bemused as she said,
"What's a sparkler?"
"Well, I could tell you,
But I think it'd be even better if I showed you. Look, look!"
Kanan dug into her paper bag of goodies and then procured a sparkler, a seemingly unremarkable brown stick. Rika accepted the sparkler from Kanan, but she seemed at a loss for what to do with it. She looked at it curiously, then said,
Thank you, Kanan. It's a really nice gift, but what does it do?"
"Well, what do you think?
It's a sparkler, dummy. It's supposed to sparkle. That's the point. It doesn't look very sparkly to me, though."
Well, it wouldn't. That's because it's not lit yet. You need to set it on fire first."
What? Is that really safe?
"It's fine. The sparklers don't burn all that much."
Do you have any matches, Mr. Haruna?
"Not on me. No, I don't smoke."
Jeez.
Kanan scoffed.
I should have known. You're so useless.
"Well, forgive me for not wanting to risk damaging my lungs. I'm frail enough without making things worse." Mizomi sighed, then rose to his feet, albeit staggeringly. His left leg didn't hurt as much as it sometimes did, but standing too suddenly still caused him discomfort. "I should have some matches inside, though. Let me get them."
Yes, you should. And be quick about it. Chop, chop!
"Yes, Your Majesty. Your wish is my command." Matsumi was still fretting about Kanan's parents, but he had already resigned himself to his fate. He knew there would be no convincing Kanan to leave of her own accord, and he didn't much want to march Kanan over to the Wakabayashi shrine. His leg might have been aching less than it usually did, but he doubted he would have been able to manage all of the stairs, and neither did he want to deal with what lay atop of them. Which Mrs. Wakabayashi was infamous about Higashikawa for her short temper. Trying to have a polite conversation with her could only serve him backfiring tremendously. It was easiest to let Kanan while away the night at his own, then return once she inevitably grew bored. Until then, Miss Masayomi would do his best to appease her. Resigned to his fate, Masayomi shuffled inside. He retrieved the matches from where he kept them in a drawer beneath Mariko's shrine. Guys, this is a lot of reading. It said 2 hours, but you know what? I'm actually not tired of the story. I'm actually really want to see the ending right now. I hope you guys are doing well, by the way. An incense stick was placed in a little dish next to a black ribbon photograph of his late wife, though the stick had burnt down. Masayomi decided to relight the incense on a whim after retrieving the matches, then smiled at Mariko. "My life has taken quite a lot of twists and turns, Mariko. You have no idea how busy things have gotten since I took Rika in. She's a good girl, but her friend can be a bit of a nuisance. Still, it's nice that the house is so lively again. I think you would have enjoyed it. I know you've always wanted a young girl. I'm just sorry I couldn't give you one." Masayomi bowed his head in offering, then shuffled back to the veranda. He took the matches despite Kanan's order to hand them over. He wasn't foolish enough to trust Kanan with any means to start a fire on command, and lit the ends of Kanan's and Rinka's sparklers for them. Kanan seemed a bit peeved by this. "I could have done it myself, you know." But Rinka's resulting gasp of joy was enough to smooth the furrow from her brow. She smiled and nudging Rinka on the side, she said,
"So, what do you think? Sparklers are pretty cool, huh? They're amazing! They really are sparkly! Aren't they just? I played with them before with Miss Suzu and Ayako, and
Kanan pulled an exaggerated face.
We say. But it's even more fun to play with you! You always look so shocked by everything I bought these with my own pocket money because I wanted to see what face he made when we started playing with them. I knew you love it. Just look!"
Kanan began to wave her sparkler in the air, leaving her kimono fluttering.
You can even write your name on it. Woo!
Rika watched transfixion as Kanan moved her right on dexterously, like a master calligrapher. Perhaps her mother's rigorous home education had been for naught after all. The sparkle left a golden trail in the dark air which took a few moments to dissipate.
amazing! That's really amazing! Isn't it just? Ayako showed me how to do it, and I think I'm pretty good at it. Do you want to try? Oh,
Rika flushed.
I'm not as good as writing as you are. It's still a little hard for me.
Do you want me to help you, Rika? I can help guide you.
If you wouldn't mind.
Alright then. It goes a little like this. Masayomi took Rika's wrist between his fingers and manipulated her hand, just as he had when he had first taught her how to use chopsticks. With Masayomi's help, Rika was able to write the character for her name in the air like a knothead, or at least an approximation of that. She was a little clumsy, but it was better than nothing. Rika and Kanan played with the sparklers for a few minutes more while Masayomi watched on. Kanan was being quite aggressive with her sparkler. Not content to simply spell out her name, she has shifted to spelling simple words like cat and dog and flower, which burned her sparkler out more quickly. The end soon fizzled out, and Masayomi had her dump it in a bucket of cool water, which she brought outside for the girls. Kanan had more sparklers, however, and Masayomi lit a new one for her obediently enough, and then a new one for Rika too. The girls played with the sparklers under Masayomi's careful supervision. Every once in a while, he warned Kanan to be careful. You'll poke somebody's eye out if you keep waving that thing around so carelessly. Calm down! Both of them giggling to themselves. Kanan finished with her second sparkler and had just lit her third, when she said in an unusually contemplative voice.
You know, you really are my best friend, Rika. I'm glad I can spend so much time with you. Which is why it makes me so mad when people say mean things about you. Do people say a lot of real things about me?
Let me read it.
Do people say a lot of mean things about me?
Sometimes. Issei brought you up earlier actually when I broke her stupid shoes. She said I was a naughty little girl, and if I didn't learn to behave better, she'd take me over to Mr. Haruna's old house so his demon daughter could eat me. She was going on and on, acting like you're so scary, but it's stupid. She's never even met you. She doesn't know the first thing about you. Issei's an idiot, and so's everybody else. I don't get why they're so scared of you. You never even come into the village. People act like you're some scary monster, but they're the ones that scare you away. It's so unfair. It is indeed unfair, but people are often ignorant. They tend to mistrust people who are different to them, people they can't understand. It's unfortunate, but I think it will take a lot of time and a fair bit of work if we wish for the world to be a kinder place.
I don't want to wait for the world to be a better place, though. I want it to be better now. I'll make it better now.
Masayomi smiled wryly, amused by Kanan's ironclad determination. For such a little girl, she had rather big dreams. Her fancies seemed bigger than she was, but Masayomi didn't want to knock her down a peg. He was rather intrigued by what she might say. And how do you intend to do that?
It's easy. The next time Issei says anything about Rinka, I'll punch her. That should make her shut up.
Momentarily painful. Masayomi's brow raised in concern as he considered the practical implications of the so-called plan. Rinka, meanwhile, stared at Kanan in horror, her face pale in the moonlight.
No, Kanan, you cannot do that!
Can't I?
No, I don't want you to hurt anybody. Not for me. I don't think I'm worth it. Hey!
Kanan pouted, then gave Rinka a poke and another and another.
I'm not having any of that, Rinka. You're my bestest friend in all the world, and you're really nice. Of course you're worth it. I punch moody old Missy in the face for you any day of the week. I'm not scared of her.
I appreciate your thoughtfulness, but I'm afraid I have to agree with Rinka. I don't think any Missy, or anybody else for that matter, will warn the villagers to Rinka. But it will only make them dislike her more, and they turn against you too, if they knew you spent so much time with her. I thought you were supposed to be keeping this a secret.
I am keeping it a secret, but it ain't fair. I wish I didn't have to. I'm not ashamed of Rinka. I want everybody to know she's my friend. She's my best friend. That wiped the smug look off Mise's face.
I think it more likely she will report to your mother about your friendship, and you would be banned from sneaking out to see us in the future.
Oh no! I don't want that! You have to keep coming here! I miss you so much! Well, of course I'll keep coming. I keep coming even my mother told me not to. I don't want to stay away from you, Rinka. but I wish I could do more to help.
That's alright, Kenan. You're friends with Rika, and I think that should be enough to make her happy. We can both take care of her, isn't that right?
Well, of course, I'll take good care of Rika. I have to. She's my best friend and I love her.
Good. I'm glad. I love her a lot too.
You too.
Rika looked between Kenan and Masaomi, her eyes wet with burgeoning tears. Then her eyes wanted glassy. She said,
Did you really mean that? 1,000,000%. How many times do I have to tell you?
I wonder that myself sometimes. I know I reassured Rika about this over and over, but it never seems to take.
I do understand.
I do understand how you feel though. Rika, ever so far. While I was never persecuted like you are, I was given quite a wide berth when I was younger.
You were?
Masaomi nodded and Kenan frowned. But you look so ordinary.
But you look so ordinary, Mr. Haruno. What did anybody ever have against you?
I appreciate that you think I look ordinary. I'll take that as a compliment. But to answer your question, my health was rather poor when I was a child. I caught every single illness available to my poor parents' despair. I spent more time indoors than not, and my parents and my physicians were both surprised that I lived into adulthood. I have always been fragile, however. My long string of childhood illnesses left me with a limp leg which doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. The war broke out when I was still a young man, and many men my age, my other brothers included, were conscripted while I remained here. Many people who I lost their lives, while I remained in relative comfort. I was shunned a fair deal for that. Many people thought of me as a coward who was unwilling to defend my country. I had quite a rough time of it, so I do understand how Rika must feel. Maybe that was why I felt so drawn to her. I suppose we're both misfits, which means we ought to stick together.
Masaomi.
Rika gave Masaomi's hand a squeeze and said,
I don't think you're a misfit. You're always being home with me.
You too, Rika. I'll always be there for you. I promise. Kenan regarded Masaomi coolly, her hands on her hips. Then she scowled.
You're not that special, you know.
I beg your pardon.
I don't know much about any war, but you're not the only person who's had it bad. I don't fit in either. I live in the stupid shrine with my parents and they're so strict. My mom doesn't let me go to school with the other kids, and she doesn't let me dress in nice clothes, and she doesn't like it when I listen to Reverse Rainbow or when I try to practice their dances either. She wants me to train me up to be a shrine maiden like my big sisters, but there's already 3 of them. Do I really need to help out? All the stuff at the shrine's so boring. There's so much cleaning to do, and I need to take part in all these funny dances, and my mother says she wants me to take part in weddings and funerals too. She says being a shrine maiden is this great honor, and I should be thankful and blah blah blah, and I can't stand it. It's boring. My sister and the others might like it. My sister's real good at being all elegant and graceful, but I don't. The shrine's too big, and there's too much work to do, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to dress nice, and I don't want to take part in these silly festivals or ceremonies, and I don't want all the work. I don't want my whole life being planned for me. I'm still a kid. I'd much rather run away with you, Rinka. Then we could be rid of the stupid village, and maybe we finally be happy. Huh?
Rinka started, her face flushing as Kenan took hold of her hands.
Did you really want to do that? Yeah, you're really nice, Rika, and you're real smart. I love to run away with you. I'm fired, but I think that would make Masaomi sad. He'd be on his own, and I don't want to leave him. He's done so much for me. It wouldn't seem fair. Oh, who cares about him? He's just a boring old guy. I'm sure you have much more fun with me.
Excuse you, Miss Wakabayashi.
Masaomi gave Kenan's chick a gentle peach, and she scowled. Hey, what was that for?
You ought to know I admire the patience of the Buddha himself, but I don't take lightly to being called a boring old guy. That is no way to talk to me. Not when I've been letting you come here for a year, and I've been feeding you snacks.
They're boring snacks though. All you eat are pickled plums and senbei. I like dango much more.
And I'm afraid that's why I can't let you run away with Rika. diet is appalling. Your teeth would fall out within a month, and then what would become of you? You wouldn't be able to eat your beloved dango anymore, or any diet food either.
Did that really happen? Of course not. He's just trying to scare you, Rinka.
No, I'm not. I'm being deadly serious. My mother had a sweet tooth. She had to have a full set of dentures before she was 40 because of the toll the sugar took on her. You don't want to have your teeth removed, do you, Kanan? Kanan pulled a face.
That sounds like a threat.
This one. It's more of a friendly word. If you want to elope with Rinka, I will give you my blessing. I will miss her. But I will be happy as so long as she's happy. But you need to get your act together first, young madam. Otherwise, we'll have trouble.
Ooh, you really are boring!
Kanan pouted, then looked up at the starry sky. It looked like she was in another one of her surly moods, though this soon changed when she saw a streak of silver flashing across the sky.
Oh, wow!
Kanan grabbed Rinka's shoulder. Rinka squeaked, and giving her a violent shake, she pointed at the night sky and cried,
Hey, Rinka, look at that! Look!
Rinka raised her own head as did Masaomi. In unison, three of them examined the night sky which hung above their heads, and then...
Ooh!
Like Kanan before her, Rinka gasped.
What's going on, Kanan? Masaomi, what are those?
Those are...
Oh, wow. Don't you know anything? You're so sheltered, Rinka. Mr. Haruna must have been teaching you properly, so I guess I'll have to do it. Those are shooting stars. Shooting?
Rinka's brow furrowed in confusion. It looked like she was trying to make sense of the fantastical scene she was witnessing, trying but failing. It was quite sweet how perplexed Rinka seemed by such a simple sight. One children across the country might have taken to be commonplace. But Rinka had only been living amongst humans for a year. There was a good deal she did not know, a good deal which still managed to take her breath away. She had been astounded by the dangle which Kanan had smuggled her, and she was similarly astounded by the bright lights which were streaking across the sky. There were quite a few shooting stars. They spread across the indigo ether, leaving trails of light beneath them, almost seeming to tear through space itself. The trails of these stars were bright enough that Rinka's irises shone from them, red like rubies.
I thought stars were supposed to stay in the sky. I never seen them move before.
The stars might look motionless, but they're actually moving all the time.
They are?
That's right, they move very, very slowly, and because we're so far away, we can't see them move. Not most of the time, at least. It's only on special occasions like this that they streak through the sky. I think I read that shooting stars are actually meteorites, which fall through space so quickly they start to burn.
I thought they were supposed to be stars, though. What's a meteorite?
A meteorite is...
Who cares about that? That's not the part that really matters. Mr. Haruna's getting all hung up on the little things again. What does matter then? Don't you know?
Kanan beamed bright and toothy.
Shooting stars are meant to grant your wishes. When you see one, you need to think about something you really, really want. You have to hold it in your hand, and if you think hard enough, it'll come true. That's what Ayako told me once anyway. Something I really, really want.
Rinka repeated Kanan's words as though they were prophetical. One hand resting upon her chest. She frowned, then she said,
There's lots of things I want. But mostly I just want Masaomi to be happy.
Rinka? Masaomi glanced away from the shooting stars and touched. He had seen stars or meteorites rather streaking through the sky a few times in the past, and while it was a pretty sight, it had less of an impact than what Rinka had just said. Was she really willing to sacrifice her wish to make him happy? It was very kind of her, but... as nice as that is, I think you use your wish for yourself. You don't need to be so selfless.
That's right, Rinka. You can wish for something better than that. But there isn't anything I want more than that. Oh, please don't be so boring! Masaomi's an adult, so he's meant to make you happy. And besides, you're not supposed to tell everybody your wish. It won't come true if you do that. Does that mean Masaomi won't be happy then?
I'm sure it will be, Rinka. You don't need to worry about that, but Kanan is right, for once. Masaomi smiled widely as Kanan stuck her tongue at it. You shouldn't waste your wish on me. You should use it for yourself.
I don't think it's a waste, but if you both insist. I do!
That's right.
wish for something else. But you need to wish for something for two. Both of you. How?
Kana laughed as she imagined a fine lady would, one hand beneath her chin.
Who do you take me for? I already made a wish. In fact, I made a whole bunch of them. Can you do that? I don't see why not. There's a whole load of shooting stars up there, and they all have my name on them.
That sounds like you, alright, Kanad. Masayomi smiled brightly. It wouldn't have been at all surprised if Kanad had requested a dozen things from the starry sky. Chins could be awfully impetuous. But Masayomi's desire was rather more humble than that. He looked up at the night sky, his eyes filled with stars. Softly he smiled, his lips curved upwards. And as Rika Gav said, Ganam whooped, he made a wish, one which he didn't utter aloud, for fear it might not come true. What Masayomi wished for, as the shooting stars rose across the sky, was nothing groundbreaking. He didn't wish for world peace, though Masayomi was an optimist. He didn't believe that this was achievable. And neither did he want personal wealth. He had a home of his own, and that was enough to content him. He didn't want anything for himself. He had lived longer than he had ever thought he would. He had already accumulated everything he desired. What he wanted instead was something simple. He just wanted Rika to be happy.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh wow, we're going 2 years in the future? Talk about a time jump. Oh, he's dying now. We're back at the beginning. Whatever happened to you know? How are we jumping 2 years already?
He lay on his back on his futon, staring with vacant eyes at the ceiling. His vision was beginning to blur and had been failing him for the last couple of years, but now everything looked vague and half-formed. His own bedroom was almost unfamiliar to him. So instinct he might as well have been viewing it through a thick film of fog. Not certain he wasn't doing anything strenuous, he was only lying down, but it was worrying hard for him to breathe. It felt like a weight was pressing on his chest, one which forcefully drove the air from his lungs. Weakly, the old man gasped in hand, his emaciated body shuddered. He was now so unwell that help seemed like little more than a distant memory. Though the illness had come about relatively quickly, it had all begun a week prior when Masayomi had begun to cough. He had thought little of it in the beginning. He was used to catching various illnesses, but as the days passed, his cough had gotten steadily worse. It had been 3 days after the onset of his cough that he had begun to feel flushed and feverish, before that he had begun to cough up blood. Now, over a week into his ailment, he was so drained he could not sit up on his futon. For the last couple of days, Masayomi had done little more than lie there, sleeping in fits and bursts, waking only to sip the cool barley tea which Rinka had brought to him. Rinka had been very, very good about all of this. She had gone to the village for Masayomi's sake, despite his cautioning. When it became apparent Masayomi wasn't going to recover, she had gone searching for a physician who might tend to him, but her best results had been met with failure. Nobody had wanted to come and visit Haruna Masayomi at the instances of a demon, not when he had been a stain on the community for 3 years. Wow, they still hold a grudge against him. That's sad. Rika had returned in tears, though she had tried to swallow him down when she sat by Masayomi's side.
It'll be alright,
she told him, in a voice which wavered. A voice which made it apparent she knew it wouldn't be.
We don't need them anyway. I can take care of you.
Masayomi had thanked Rinka for her kindness, but he had little faith in her abilities to nurse. Masayomi had been ill many times before, but he had never been ill quite like this. He felt utterly exhausted, even more so than he had as a young boy. In his youth, Masayomi had caught every strand of pneumonia that was going around, much to his parents' despair. His parents had called numerous physicians to check upon their sickly young son, and their outlooks had, for the most part, been grim. Few thought he would live into adulthood, not even his own mother or father. Masayomi had been able to defy all their expectations, however. He had lived for much longer than anybody anticipated. He outlived his parents, his 2 older brothers, and his wife. Now Masayomi was 62. He was much older than anybody had ever imagined he would grow to be, but this no longer felt like enough. He had only been afforded 3 years with Rinka, 3 years which had passed in the blinking of an eye. Masayomi had wanted to spend more springs with her, more summers, more autumns, more dark cold winters too. He had wanted to see her growing older, and wanted to watch her growing into her own person. Masayomi had so desperately wanted to see her picking up new hobbies, making new friends, living her own life. But perhaps this had been wishful thinking. Other than Kenan, nobody in Higashikawa would give Rinka a chance. Rinka's existence had been isolated, and perhaps it had been lonely, but Masayomi had still wanted her to be happy. He had done everything he could to keep her safe, to let her know that she was loved. But his time was fast running out. Masayomi's illness was awfully persistent. It had sunk into his lungs, robbing him of his air, forcing him to try to inhale to milk instead. He had been coughing a lot lately, yet every single coughing fit left him feeling even weaker than before. He felt like a shell of man. His arms and legs had shrunk remarkably only a week, because he had been unable to eat, and now he felt he looked more like a collection of kindling thrown into a kimono than a man. He didn't want Rinka to remember him like this, so infirm he could not sit up himself upright. He was grateful nonetheless that Rinka did not shrink away from him, even in his sickened state. Grateful though that she must have been. Rinka didn't avert her eyes from Masayomi in his final moments. She didn't leave him. Determinedly loyal almost to a fault, she continued to sit by his side, her hand clutching his. Masayomi appreciated it, but he feared what Rinka would do after he passed on. She would continue to live, and that, Masayomi feared, was much more frightening than what was to occur to him. Rinka. Masayomi addressed Rinka when he was next table. His coughing had subsided, for the present at least, and though his voice was faint and whispery, he was able to articulate himself well enough. Masayomi was uncomfortably aware of the constraints of time. There was a lot he wished to say to Rinka, but he feared he wouldn't be able to articulate it all. There was too much to say in too little time. It was impossible to condense the last 2 years into a 3-minute or even a 30-minute speech. But he could at least try. That was one of Masayomi's greatest strengths. He had always tried, no matter how improbable his odds seemed. I wish I could have spent more time with you. The years I passed with you brought me so much joy. You might not be you, but you're still the me Morito and I always wanted. Morito was never able to meet you, but I'm sure if she had, she would have loved you just as much as I do. You really do mean the world to me. But I don't have much time left. I can't keep looking at them. However much I want to. Masayomi's face contorted as he spoke this simple truth. Not with physical pain, though he take ache, often lower fear for Rinka's sake. What was to become of her? The thought weighed upon Masayomi even more heavily than his illness, making it hard for him to breathe, much like speak. I know that you won't be accepted the way you are now, not by the village or by society. We might live in a world full of change and technological advancements. People are still people, no matter how many fancy gadgets they have, or nice clothes they wear. They can accept rice cookers and colored photographs and all sorts of things I can only dream about as a boy. They still can accept kind little girls like me. I wish that wasn't the case, but Masayomi coughed weakly, his body convulsed. He had grown so sick and so wasted, his skin had turned gray, and it clung to his face like a mask. There was so much he wished to say, yet he found it difficult to get out the words. What he fretted must Rinka have been thinking. She must have been so afraid, the poor girl, of how his sickness was making him deteriorate, but still she continued to stay with him. She had not moved. That meant more to Masayomi than he could articulate, even as his vision blurred. Masayomi! Masayomi!
and everything began to turn dark. What's gonna happen to her?
Masaomi! Masaomi!
Rika stared at her surrogate father anxiously, her red eyes wide. He had been talking lucidly enough before, but now his eyelids had fallen shut, his chest heaving and falling from the effort of inhaling. The warmth of the shipping in his chest and the pain rattled his being. Rika would have thought him dead already. This did little to his worries, however. Panic had began to grip her, cold hard panic which seized hold of her heart like an icy wall. Rika had been sitting with Masaomi for 3 days, rising only to prepare him cups of cool barley tea to damp his lips, but for all of her best efforts, Masaomi was still dying. Rika could tell quite plainly that he was dying. Rika had never seen a person die before, but it was an unmistakable sight. She would have known Masaomi was unwell, even if he had been sitting up on his futon smiling, because of the stench of death which hung upon her, thick and heavy like a blanket. He smelled of sweat and unwashed sheets, and the sickly sweet incense Rika had taken to burning to clear up the air. It smelled of decay, poorly masked by the fragrance of hibiscuses. It smelled of the end.
Masaomi! Masaomi, please!
Rika gave Masaomi's withered hand a squeeze, praying for a miracle, praying just as fervently, if not more so, as she had when the summer sky had been full of shooting stars. She stared and stared, trembling until no! Mutely, Masaomi coughed. His eyelids slowly opened. Everything Masaomi did now was slow, and he smiled. My apologies, Rika. It seems like not at all for a moment. It was oh, pardon, especially when we were having a conversation. I'm sorry I have to see you like this here. My being really is quite shameful.
No, it's alright.
Rika tried to reassure Masaomi, though of course he wasn't alright. How could it be when Masaomi was dying? Every part of Rika screamed that things were not alright, from her very last eyelash to the dirt over those, but what was she to do? She had tried everything she could. She had sat by Masaomi and slept by him and tried to make him comfortable, but it wasn't enough. She had no training when it came to medicine and knew little of how human bodies worked, save for the fact they were further than her own and more susceptible to disease. Other than that, Rika was completely lost. Maybe things would have been better if the doctor had consented to see Masaomi. But his maid had slammed the door in Rika's face. Nobody had wanted to help. Masaomi was dying, but even now the villagers were determined to shun him. Was this how it would end? Masaomi on his back, breathing his last, knowing that everybody in the village had abandoned him? Rika didn't want that. She couldn't accept it, but accepted she had to. It was her new reality. It wasn't alright at all. Masaomi was still going to die.
Why should we apologize?
Rika spoke softly, her fingers squeezing Masaomi's arm a little too tightly, tight enough to hurt.
It's because of me that nobody would come and see you. If I wasn't here, if you hadn't taken care of me, then the physician would have come. Maybe he could save you. You still have a chance, but
now I consider myself very fortunate. Masaomi smiled. She had been a very convincing smile, not when he had become so alarmingly emaciated. There was a real warmth in his eyes, which imbued his words with an unexpected earnestness. Did he really consider himself fortunate? Rika found that hard to believe when he was in such a dire state, but if he could smile like that.
What's so fortunate about all of this? I don't get it.
Oh, it's not so complicated. I simply consider myself fortunate to have met you. My life has been a lot better since you arrived, so don't apologize for me. You made the last 3 years worth living.
But if it wasn't for me, you have many, many more years left to live. You can get better. This wouldn't have to be the end.
Yes, maybe you're right. For the
Just as she protected perhaps I could live a little bit longer. But it would be a hollow, empty life. And I would still be on my own. To my nephew. And I wouldn't trade what we have for years of solitude. That doesn't sound like a fair exchange to me.
Masaomi.
Rika's eyes filled with tears. Though she tried to calm him, she gave his hand a little squeeze, more than an attempt to reassure her that he must heal. He was the one lying on the futon. He was the one racked with pain, but Rika was the one who was shaking. She couldn't help herself. Though she appreciated Masaomi's kindness, she wished she had never been forced to choose between her or his own health. He seemed a ghastly sort of thing to consider, but life was often uncomfortable. Rika had been shielded from the worst of life's ills by Masaomi, but even then, she knew full well how unfair the world could be. It really wasn't fair that Masaomi should be in such a state. But he was, and there was nothing Rika could do about it. She had never before felt so helpless. Now look, I've been through it. So Rika, ever since I took you in, I wanted to learn more about demons and about your capabilities. And this day would eventually come. That would be plotted. Though not even I thought it would happen quite so soon. That is rather unfortunate. But it is no matter. No matter. Rika stared at Masaomi, stunned into silence. How could he lie there on his deathbed, so pale and so shrunken, and say it was no matter? He must have been trying to reassure her, but it didn't work. More tears began to beat in Rika's eyes, tears which she wiped away aggressively with a trailing sleeve breaking boner. She was Masaomi would have tried so hard to be strong for her. Why could he not show her a moment of weakness? He was quite literally dying. Rika wouldn't have blamed him for it, but he must have wanted to worry her. Even until the end, Masaomi was thinking about nothing but Rika. During my reading, I discovered something interesting. I don't know how true this is, but I read a curious full volume of folk stories about demons can become humans if they eat the heart of the human himself. Oh, are they gonna go there? Oh,
What?
Rika stared at Masaomi stunned. She was so shocked that she forgot all the words she had learned while living with Masaomi, forgot how to speak. All she could do was sit there as the rain continued to fall against the slate roof. Rika's face, which was already pale, turned the same color as flour. She was shaking, but Masaomi wasn't finished yet. I don't know if this is true, like I said. Well, I don't think you can learn to try it. I'm going to die anyway. I won't leave my heart when it stops beating. You will continue to live on your life. You'll still be alive. I want you to live as happy as you can. I've sacrificed myself for you to improve your aspects, but I would do it. Quickly, Masaomi laughed, his chest rising and falling from me. And a heart beating to his own skin. I don't want it. For myself, I'm over it. My tongue. Give me my body. Message. Please step out of that. All of you. That is what I have to do. I believe it happens.
No!
Rika stared at myself and stunned hard. His body convulsed with a series of particularly dry, hacking coughs as if he meant to expunge his lungs from his throat. His face, which was ashy, seemed to turn even paler, like snow. Masaomi's breath started to rattle inside his chest, just like a bag of bones being shaken after a funeral service. It sounded as if every inhalation was a struggle, as if every breath might very well be his last. Masaomi groaned painfully, piteously, and Rika's own heart twisted inside her chest as he did. Rika didn't want him to leave her, and yet,
Masaomi.
and yet,
Masaomi, please don't leave me!
Rika, please,
I
can't do anything else for you. But I would like at least to give you the gift as I thought. I want you to be safe, and I would be willing to give my body up for it. That's how much you mean to me. I'm sure any father would do the same for his daughter. Promise to me, my heart, when I'm dead, that I will be able to pass away without any revulsion, told Masayomi's macabre idea had been until she couldn't pull away from him. These were Masayomi's final moments, and this indisputably was Masayomi's final request. He just wanted Rika to be happy. He was prepared to go to any length to make her happy, even as he lay dying. To refuse his wish now would be to do him to die in agony. Fearful for Rika's future, she didn't want that. She wanted that even less than she wanted to sink her deep into Masayomi's art. What Masayomi wanted was unusual, but there was nothing cruel about it. His face as he looked at Rika was soft and gentle. So much so it made Rika gasp. She could hardly believe what she was about to do, could hardly bring herself to agree to something so awful. But
That's what you want?
Rika swallowed. She looked down at Masayomi's light face, which was so very cold and so full of pain, and said,
I promise.
Masayomi didn't reply to Rika's promise. Perhaps she no longer had the strength. He really did look very thin in this moment, and very frail. So he opened his mouth, no words came out. Instead, he exhaled, a dry, defeated sort of sound, which could make him mind of the breeze by the fast trees at night. Then there was nothing. Masayomi's eyelids fell such slowly, heavily as if weighed down by iron, and he never spoke again. He had breathed his last, but at least he had done so with a smile. Had Masayomi's death been a peaceful one, had he been satisfied in his last moments that he had done all he could for Rika, and he would continue to do all he could for her, even after his death? Rika wasn't sure. She didn't know what Masayomi was thinking, or had been thinking rather, before he had succumbed. But she wanted to believe that he had passed on without any regrets. She wanted to believe that in death he had been happy, that perhaps she could continue to live on, just as Masayomi had wanted. He had wished for nothing more to save Rika's own happiness, but tears began to bleed in Rika's eyes regardless. She couldn't help herself. Rika slumped forward, sobbing as hot, wet tears coursed down her cheeks. They were salt, and they stung her eyes, so she slipped. Rika would have wiped her eyes with her arm, but she hadn't strength for it, and neither could she see the point. Why bother trying to dry her tears when they would continue to fall? She wept bitterly on and on over Masayomi's body, her back bent, lying forwards, her fingers curled against the front of his kimono. She shuddered. She could smell Masayomi when she inhaled, not just the raw, unwashed sense of sweat and of his death, but of something softer than that, something sweeter. She thought she could smell, however faintly, the aroma of sandalwood and of the falling rain. That was how Masayomi has always smelled to her, of a forest during a rainstorm, which continued to hold for her no matter how fierce the weather. Masayomi had found Rika on a stormy night just like this, where the sun heaven half flooded, the ceremonial pond bursting its banks. The rain had brought Masayomi into Rika's life, and now it was taking him from her. It didn't feel like an act of cruelty, however, imposed upon her by the gods. Instead, it felt like the natural way of things. Life was as unpredictable as a river. People could come into one's life and leave just as easily. But Rika knew she would never ever forget Masayomi. She owed him far too much, and in any case, she had made a promise to him. Rika drew back from Masayomi's corpse, which was slowly cooling. Her shoulders shook, and more tears sold down her throat, down her cheeks. Tears she didn't bother to wipe away. In front of Masayomi's kimono was them from Rika's protracted sobbings, but she didn't suppose that mattered too much, not when she considered the grim task before her. She didn't want to do it. The thought turned her stomach, but she had promised. She had told Masayomi she would honor his final request, and she didn't want to go back on her word. Rika sat on her haunches for a few moments, looking down at Masayomi's corpse. She inhaled. Then, before she had the time to change her mind, she leaned in. She extended her right hand, her claws unfurled. And with a sick, wet skirt, she sunk her claw into Masayomi's chest. Her claws were sharp and dark like obsidian, and it pierced the fabric of Masayomi's kimono easily enough, rending it like two-leg paper. Masayomi's skin tore asunder beneath Rika's claws. Rika was hardly aware of her own strength, never having caused the using, but the sheer ease with which she eviscerated Masayomi made Rika shudder. Her hand, though already done, was soon sweetly burned. Bits of viscera caught underneath her tails. Her turned her attention to Masayomi's ribs next. Rika exposed them to the air. Several white elegant arches which protected his cardiovascular. I don't know how to say this, I'm sorry. I'm not a doctor. Rika knew little about human anatomy, but she knew where the heart was. She had heard Masayomi's heart beat against hers. When he had cradled her close, had been lulled to sleep by his regular humming, when, after waking from nightmares, Masayomi had pulled her into his arms. The reality of Masayomi's heart beating had been a great comfort to Rika. To her, it had not symbolized his mortality, but his strength despite his fragile, his ability to endure no matter what. Masayomi had been able to endure his sickness though. He had finally passed. His heart had given out. But Rika would see that it was repurposed properly. She was going to give it a new home, just as Masayomi had wanted. Rika snapped Masayomi's ribs as though with salted crackers. They splintered, rent in twain between Rika's hand, and Masayomi's heart was soon exposed. Rika examined it for a few moments as entranced as she had been on that night when shooting stars had streaked across the sky. There was something oddly beautiful about Masayomi's heart despite how slimy it looked, how slick and how wet. So this is what had kept Masayomi alive for so many years. This is what Rika had to thank for the half decade she had spent with her father. Were it not for this muscle, Rika looked so unassuming, just like Masayomi himself. Rika's life would have taken a very different trajectory. There was a degree of reverence in the way Rika let her fingers skim across Masayomi's heart. She exhaled. Then, very softly, she thanked them, the man who had made so many sacrifices for her sake, and who had adored her above all else.
Thank you for everything, Father.
With these words of thanks on her lips that Rika squeezed, then she tore. She read Masayomi's heart from its cavity, as its jaw might fall from the earth, splattering her and their clothes with even more gore. The heart had seemed larger somehow, inside Masayomi's chest. Outside of it, in Rika's palm, it seemed much too small to keep it grown and alive for so many years. Humans might have considered themselves a superior species, but they were awfully fragile. Masayomi had been more fragile than most, but he had done so much for Rika. He had made endless sacrifices for her. This was just one more banning. Rika yelled, the smell of iron heavy in the air inside her nostrils. She shuddered. Then she threw her head. She brought her lips. Man, this real thing. Oh my god. They really ended it like that. That's crazy. Oh, we got an envelope. Why did... Well, I was wondering what happened to Kenan. So Kenan's bored, and it almost a fortnight she's passing Rika, and she could not help but worry about her friend, about Masayomi too. Last time she had visited the Haruna household, Masayomi hadn't been feeling particularly well. He had been suffering from an acid cough, and he had been feeling too feeble to keep it on both Rika, who didn't need that much supervision, and Kenan, who did. Kenan had wanted to linger a little longer to show Rika some of the interesting pills she managed to find in the forest around the shrine, but she possessed just enough self-awareness to know that her company wasn't wanted. Masayomi was getting on in years and he needed to rest. Kenan had kept away from the Haruna household since then, both out of concern for Masayomi and a more selfless, self-interested worry for herself. Kenan didn't know exactly what it was that Masayomi was suffering from, but she hadn't wanted to risk catching it herself. His cough really had seemed nasty. Kenan was afraid if she contracted a similar chest infection, all the coughing would rub her throat red raw, that she would have been able to sing rigorous rainbow songs anymore, and that really would be a tragedy. Kenan didn't want her dreams of being out to wrench out of her hands. Even Mise did delight in saying that her younger sister's singing sounded like a cat being stepped on when she sang. Of course, Kenan was still worried about Rika, and she was worried about Masayomi, but she hoped everything would be alright. Masayomi had been unwell, that much was inarguable, but he had only been suffering from a cold. Surely couldn't have been that bad. Well, Kanan would be able to find out for herself soon enough. She didn't know what she would be next to be able to seek out. Her mother had been giving her endless tasks, but when she did, she would make sure to buy Rinka some more dango from Mrs. Mochizuki. That should cheer her up, if nothing else. For the present, however, Kanan needed to keep her mother happy. Her mother had been all happy when Kanan had crept out of the house last summer to play with Rinka in the garden. Kanan hadn't told her mother where she'd gone. She wasn't stupid. Her lack of response made her mother even angrier. Taking her silence for insolence, her mother had grounded Kanan for a whole month. She hadn't been able to receive Rinka for the rest of the summer, and it wore away at her. Kanan was no longer in disgrace, but she fancied her mother had been keeping a close eye on her than usual. She barely had time to herself anymore. It was so stifling. Kanan was feeling rather hard done by as she stood outside the shrine, sweeping at a few loose leaves with a broom. Her mother had tasked her to clean the outside of the shrine, and that was what she was going to do. She didn't want to give her mother reason enough to scold her again. My goodness, it was so tedious. Kanan nudged the leaves hard-heartedly, her thoughts on Rika and on Masumi, when... Excuse me, this is the Wakabayashi shrine, right? Huh? Kanan blinked. She had been so focused on sweeping that she had failed to hear the sound of approaching footsteps up the stairs which led to the secluded shrine. The voice sounded familiar. Kanan immediately recognized it. Was that really... Rinka? Kanan lifted her head, shielding her eyes from the sun's rays which filtered down from overhead. The clouds overhead shifted as Kanan moved, sending a shaft of light downwards like some sort of spear. The sunlight was unexpectedly bright, and Kanan winced. For a few moments, her vision went white. The sunlight eventually waned, however, and when it did, Kanan gazed. She dropped the simple bamboo brush she had been clutching, which hit the ground with a clatter. The girl standing in front of her might have sounded like Rinka, but she didn't look like her. Not really. Her hair, which had been a beautiful folding gold, was now as dark as Kanan's own. No, even darker. It was black, just like squid ink. The eyes framed by this dark hair, meanwhile, were not red like spider lilies, but dark brown. The girl wore one of the kimonos Kanan had seen Rinka wear, but she didn't pull it down self-consciously about her claws like Rinka did. There was no need. This girl didn't have any claws. She didn't have any horns. She looked utterly normal from tip to toe, so unremarkable Kanan wouldn't have looked twice at her if she had seen her walking down the street. Just who was this girl? Kanan approached Rinka, if indeed she really was Rinka, with some trepidation, stepping over her fallen broom. Oh! Kanan halted in front of the girl and peered into her eyes. Then she pressed her palms against the girl's cheeks, feeling them as if to check whether she was a real person made of flesh and blood or a mirage. When Rinka didn't waver, however, Kanan swallowed. You really are her, aren't you? Kanan looked at Rinka searchingly, her palms still cupping her cheeks. For a few moments, Rinka said nothing. She held Kanan's gaze, her eyes a little too wide, blinking unsure of herself, horribly uncertain. Until after a brief pause, she nodded. You are? Another nod. No way, it looks so different now. What in the world happened to you? Where's Mr. Haruna? Rinka inhaled, her breath seeming to catch in her throat as if it were something spiky. She winced. Moisture began to bead in her eyes. Then with a wet, withering sob, she began to cry. Ah, it's bittersweet. Man, this was nice. Man, this is a note from the author. He's talking about how he's very much the anime Usagi Drop. I have seen Usagi Drop. The manga, not so much. Everybody knows how infamous the manga is. And the anime took a more wholesome note with it. The language of love, which is also about a parent to child. Who knows? We could do that at some point. And writing about a story where adventure literally creates their own robot shop. A Kagami Rin. He's into Kagami Rin. That's based. I know everybody's into Kasane Teto now, which, you know, I do like it, Kagami Rin. And put an ink chainsaw man. Because cannibalism as a metaphor for love is quite popular. Yeah, because there's literally an anime called I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. And this is exactly what she does, but with a heart. Well, thanks, that was nice. Yo, I'm glad that we got to look at the epilogue too. I would have hated to end it at the heart scene. She kind of looks like Tokino Sora a bit. She kind of looks like Sora-chan. Oh, that's cute. That's nice. That's cute. That's nice. I like that they got to reunite. I was wondering what happened to Kanon. Yeah, thank God for that epilogue. This was a journey, I'll say. I'll definitely say that. Well, I hope you guys liked that story. It was a lot to read. And with that said, our sun is setting for the day. The sun is setting tonight. I hope you all liked it. And with that said, we are going to rate Shiomi. Let's go rate my good friend Shiomi. And end it on a good note. So, remember to type in the chat, praise the sun. And with that said, this is your sunshine, Yui Tachibana, sun setting for the day. Thank you all for coming in. I'll see you all in the next one.